Scan complete. Frameshift drive charging.
Summers is watching the stream. Hey, Adam Buff, good to see you. It's good to be having a good stream again. I have been. I have started streaming again. Just get a few more subscribers, a few more viewers coming into the fun and frivolity.
Frameshift drive charging.
Oh yeah, Buffy. At the moment, I'm being an explorer. I'm exploring everything that this galaxy has to offer. Well, not really, just exploring it. A VIP passenger mission. Unless that's something. Finish this jump. I'll show you what I gotta do. And I'll show you exactly how far I still have to go.
System scan complete.
Well, that was easy. There's only one system in this one. Sadly, there's no Baby Yoda in this galaxy. Sadly. This is the Milky Way galaxy that I'm in. If you see here, I'm still 2,704 light years away. No, put it this way. Alright. So, this right here is affectionately known as the bubble, and this is all of human occupied space. Like all the planets, this is all of human occupied space right here. So, like I said, impressive when you first look at it, because there's God knows how many star systems in there, planets, all that. So there'd be, God knows how many people, God knows the population. But I'm going to zoom out and show you this one here. If you think that's an impressive size, But when you look at it at the size of the Milky Way, yeah, no. And
complete.
no, this is not Wally. I'll do a bit of it. So I'm going way outside the bubble. I haven't seen another human, not for a couple of days, because I had to call the fuel rats to save me out. No, I got it. But yeah, so this is the bubble of human occupied space. As you can sort of imagine it's zoom out. I'm probably, by the look of it, I think I'm 2/3 of the way to where I gotta go. Yeah, so that's the trip. That's the I gotta go so far. 98 jumps to actually get to where I'm going to go, so... I would say, oh god, here comes the trolling again. I'm not a Nintendo person, you know this. You've known this for how long, Buff? Another PlayStation play. It's very interesting being out this far because, like, not a lot of people have been out this far. So, I mean, when I do get back into civilization, I'll have a lot of exploration data to hand in, and yeah, my name will live on. And the fact is that I've discovered, you know, planets and systems, and I'm not saying I've been the furthest out of anyone, because you know there are people, and I'm going to go back to the map again just to point out how far some people have gone. They've gone from
Fuel scooping complete.
Yeah, from here. Flown from here all the way up to here. Or around Beagle Point. I'm not sure where exactly Beagle Point is. Yeah, I think it's around here somewhere, so right at the edge. But yeah, I'm sure Animal Crossing is fun. I mean, I've watched Leia play it. But yeah, I'm more space exploration. You know that. I'm sure you do have so much dino poo for me. Time to scan the system. Yeah, I know Leia's got so much dino poo for me as well. That is the plan at the moment, is to get me a Switch. Alright. What's this last planet? There you are. Gotcha.
System scan complete.
Alright. That's that system done. Next.
Frameshift drive charging. System scan complete.
Perfect. Right, a few planets to land on there.
Frameshift drive charging. System scan complete.
Alright, that was easy.
Fuel sweeping.
Alright, so this is the ship that I own. It's called the Dolphin. It's actually the smallest passenger liner out on the market, built by this company called South Kruger. And yeah, South Kruger, basically well known just for building passenger liners. Yeah, downside to animal. That's the only downside to Animal Crossing. This is what the inside of the cockpit looks like. And I think that's a bit of a look at now look at the view from that cockpit. I'm telling oh man, it's a beautiful view. The only way it could be better if the window was just literally just one window. I think that'd be better. I think that's the only thing I'd probably change about this cockpit at the moment is just make this all just make it all just one window. Yeah, you get stung all the time.
Fuel sweeping complete. Frameshift drive charging. Fuel sweeping.
Time to scan another system. I've done 6 jumps. I'm hoping to get. I'm trying to do 50 jumps a day. Because I know it'll take a while, but it's worth it. So spiders and scorpions are the only 2 bugs you don't have in Animal Crossing. Buffy, while you're here, share the video. Share it onto Facebook. Share the love.
Fuel scooping complete.
Oh, you're a fan of my work. Share the video.
System scan complete.
There we go.
Frameshift drive charging.
Go on, hit that like button, by the way, Buffy, and you know you want to. I know she's not.
incomplete. Frameshift drive charging. Fuel scooping.
Alright, obviously someone else has at least scanned this system. Maybe they've discovered the planets and I just have to rediscover them.
Fuel scooping complete.
Well, I'm not voice chatting with anyone, I just need it for the mic. Yeah.
scan complete. Frameshift drive charging. System scan complete. Fuel scooping.
Alliance protests triggered by cancelled election. The postponement of the election for a new Prime Minister has led to widespread public disorder across Alliance systems. The Alliance Assembly vote was scheduled for Thursday the 25th of February. This date clashed with the start of the Galactic Summit, causing incumbent Prime Minister Edmund Mahone to propose that the election be delayed for 3 months. On many Alliance worlds, large-scale protest marches have placed pressure on local police forces. Some civil leaders have condemned Mahone for using the diplomatic conference as an excuse to extend his term of office. Mahone has referred to the unrest as being caused by a vocal minority of agitators, and insisted that the delay is in the Alliance's best interests. Councillor Nakato Kane,
Fuel scooping complete.
Mahone's main rival, has given the protests her full support. She has become a figurehead for public dissent, with some political pundits suggesting that she might have won the election had it been held this week. Speaking to the Alliance Tribune, Councillor Kane said, "This is the latest in a string of short-sighted decisions, and it's clear that the people no longer trust their Prime Minister. For this reason, despite believing the Galactic Summit to be a waste of time, I will be attending the conference to ensure that Mahone's agenda does not dominate proceedings." Hudson and Winters confirmed for Galactic Summit. President Zachary Hudson and Shadow President Felicia Winters will both attend the diplomatic conference in the Sirius system. The Federation will also be represented by ambassadors from the Federal Diplomatic Corps, as well as several civil and corporate interests. Political correspondent Sophia Trevino reported for the Federal Times, "President Hudson's personal presence at the Galactic Summit sends the message that he still holds the reins of power. He clearly hopes that facing off against the Empire's leaders will distract the public from the recent Jupiter-Rochester scandals. In his absence, Vice President Brad Mitchell will oversee congressional matters. There are rumors that Mitchell is positioning himself to challenge Hudson as the Republican Party candidate in the next election. The conference also offers opportunities for Felicia Winters to appear presidential. She has eagerly agreed to meet the Marlinist colony's delegation, having coordinated humanitarian aid for the refugees last year. Winters has not asked Shadow VP Isolde Rochester to accompany her, perhaps as a rebuke for the criminal actions of her son. Furiously working on
Frameshift drive charging.
control for her family's name, the Rochester matriarch has taken Jupiter's 2 children into her care after his husband, Thomas Churai, filed for immediate divorce. Lakon Spaceway's HQ moves to Alien system. Pilots Federation alert.
Not
The
sparking a
capital
huge deal
system
about
of the
Jupiter
Alliance
Rochester
now
being gay.
hosts Lakon's administrative hub and offers a
He's
5%
there. He's
discount
fine.
on all ships.
Yeah,
The
he's
company's
into
main
representation
offices have been
games.
relocated to the Lakon Spaceway Central Planetary Port on Alioth 1A. All shipyards within the Alioth system are offering a permanent 5% discount on sales of vessels
Like, as far as I'm
manufactured by
concerned, that's how
Lakon.
you do represent
Pilots will need to
Fuel scooping.
obtain a permit for Alioth to take advantage of this reduction. Both the move and the discount reflect the Alliance's recent purchase of a majority sharehold in the company. This was primarily to retain it as a key defense contractor for the Alliance Defense Force. Naomi Landseer, chairperson of the board
Hey,
of
is
directors,
that you
announced,
again, Buffy, or
"We are
is
extremely
that someone else
pleased
on
to
the
be
stream?
partnered with the Alliance, especially after recent tumultuous events. Lakon's highly regarded ships
Spam
will
one.
remain available across the galaxy. The attempted takeover of Lakon Spaceways by Core Dynamics was revoked due to revelations of illegal practices by its former CEO, Jupiter Rochester. Federal news sources have reported that a rapid restructure is taking place within
How you
Core
doing out there?
Dynamics,
For those
alongside
watching,
investigations by the
doing okay
Federal
myself.
Intelligence Agency.
I said how many jumps have I done so far?
Rare
I've done
goods
10 jumps. I've
required
got
for
another
Galactic Summit.
40 jumps to do.
Pilots Federation alert.
My goal was to try and
Sirius
do
Corporation
50
has
jumps.
requested deliveries of consumables to
stream,
loitering
so
staff for the
hopefully
forthcoming diplomatic
I can
conference.
continue it.
The Galactic
Fuel
Summit
scooping complete.
will take place in the Sirius system and last for 3 weeks, beginning on Thursday the 25th of February. It will be attended by leaders from the Alliance, Empire and Federation, plus representatives from independent systems. Sirius Corporation has placed orders for these rare commodities: Eden apples of Ariel, Ethgrees tea buds,
Hey, 3 on the stream. What's going on, guys?
giant Irukana snails,
Hope you're having fun out there.
Yorken coffee,
Good to see
Carthusi
you.
locusts, and
Good to
Lady
see you
Anne
jumping
brandy.
in.
All shipments are to be delivered to Ashby City in the Loiton
Slow
star
down.
system.
I got a scan.
They will then be ferried to Sirius before the conference begins. CEO Li Yongru discussed these preparations at the
System scan complete.
media event. We will provide all honored delegates with a comfortable, luxurious environment. This includes offering the finest cuisine from across the galaxy. Several journalists pointed out that both the Alliance and Empire have registered official
Spaceship drive charging.
complaints about the Galactic Summit's location being situated deep within federal space. Li Yongru responded, "I assure you that the Sirius system is politically neutral territory, and Sirius Corporation
Wait, don't worry, I got people watching. I don't know about you guys, I'm having a time.
from the Federation. I can personally guarantee the safety and diplomatic immunity of all attendees. Victory for Federal forces against the Jupiter Division. Pilots Federation alert. Jupiter Division, the breakaway faction
System scan complete.
Core Dynamics, has been defeated in the HIP 54530 system. The independent corporate
Fuel scooping.
met armed resistance from a local faction, the Silver Legal Group, which defeated them in battle with the aid of independent ships. Director Theodore Sullivan announced, "Thanks to the courage of many pilots, we have crippled the military forces behind this illegal coup and taken control of the system. Rewards for all who fought for the Silver Legal Group are available from the Iron Wings of Justice megaship in the Tsao system. The Silver Legal Group has been awarded permit control to prevent any further compromise of federal assets. Pilots without this permit can perform missions for the faction at the Iron Wings of Justice megaship in Tsao to access the HIP 54530 system." Remnants of Jupiter Division confirmed that despite their defeat, all those who sided with them during the conflict will be reimbursed at the Victory's Fort megaship in the HIP 55014 system. The Federal Intelligence Agency has taken Jupiter Rochester into custody, where he will be charged for his involvement in the destruction of Starship 1 in 3301. Thousands of his loyalist followers have also been apprehended, and the return of stolen Core Dynamics ships and resources is being arranged.
10 jumps an hour, so
Alliance bails out Lakon Spaceways. The Alliance Assembly has approved purchasing a majority sharehold in Lakon Spaceways, gaining partial ownership of the shipbuilding company. An acquisition attempt by Federal Corporation Core Dynamics was recently revoked due to illegal practices by its former CEO Jupiter Rochester. The Alliance has now rescued Lakon from possible insolvency, using government funding to buy shares and increase investment. Naomi Landseer, the reinstated chairperson of Lakon's
Fuel scooping complete.
Board of Directors announced. We welcome becoming closer partners with the Alliance, which we see as a natural progression following successful
Frameshift drive charging.
collaboration on past projects. I'm pleased to inform customers that the manufacture of Lacon vessels will continue uninterrupted. Although some assembly members voted against the decision, including election candidate Nakato Kane, there is broad public and industry approval. The Council of Admirals has expressed gratitude that a key defense contractor will not be controlled by another superpower or corporation. Much of Lacon's personnel and resources will migrate to Alliance space, although its range of ships will remain available for purchase across the galaxy. Plans to construct a new headquarters for Lacon Spaceways within the Alioth system are well underway. Federation damaged by corruption and conspiracy. Federal citizens are in uproar after the former CEO of Core Dynamics was revealed to have destroyed Starship One to increase company profits. The trial of Fleet Admiral Vincent showed that Jupiter Rochester attempted to replace Jasmina Halsey with Zachary Hudson to secure military contracts with the Federal Navy. The Federal Intelligence Agency has arrested several co-conspirators, but its investigation is hampered by Jupiter Rochester loyalists splitting away from Core Dynamics. His new independent faction, Jupiter Division, has engaged in conflict against federal forces in the HIP 54530 system. President Hudson has claimed ignorance of the assassination plot, but public opinion polls show a decrease of trust in the Republican Party. Many have voiced anger at such corruption at the heart of the Federation, calling for further investigations into the corporate sector's influence on government.
Fuel scooping complete.
Political embarrassment has also affected the Liberal Party, with Shadow Vice President Isolde Rochester attempting to distance herself from her eldest son. Jupiter's horrendous actions were his alone, made completely without our knowledge. My whole family is appalled at his illegal activity. We have offered to aid the authorities in bringing him to justice. Enhanced Missile Rack Initiative concludes. Pilots Federation alert. Deliveries of mined materials have allowed the engineer Liz Ryder to make a one-off modified ship module widely available. The module is a fully engineered lightweight and high-capacity Class 2 Seeker missile rack with thermal cascade. It was only available for a brief period in October 3306, but can now be purchased from any human technology broker. Freshly mined bromelite, lithium hydroxide, osmium and samarium were delivered by a large number of pilots. Due to the volume of shipments received, the initial amount of materials required by customers to purchase the weapon has been temporarily reduced. Liz Ryder made this statement from her Demolition Unlimited workshop. Thank you to everyone who helped launch, so to speak, this module onto the market. I hope that engineers and tech brokers can continue working together on providing more options to the galactic community. Pilots who delivered commodities for this initiative can now collect their rewards from a wire level in the Eurybia system. Empire and Marlinists prepare for Galactic Summit. Delegations have been formed by the Empire and the Marlinist colonies to take part in the forthcoming diplomatic conference. Emperor Arisa Navigli Deval will not attend in person, but will be directly represented by Chancellor Anders Blaine. During the conference, Senator Zemina Torval will temporarily assume Chancellor duties and act as head of the Senate. In addition, Princess Ashlyn Deval and Senator Denton Patrias will be in attendance. They will be accompanied by experienced ambassadors from the Imperial Diplomatic Corps. The Marlinist colonies have also finalized their delegation, which includes First Minister Jenna Fairfax and Minister Aaron White. A spokesperson for the Marlinist Parliament said, "The Galactic Summit offers us an opportunity to engage with the Empire diplomatically, and we sincerely hope our voices will be heard. We also aim to establish mutually beneficial relations with other governments. There is widespread speculation on how the Empire will respond to political overtures from its own ex-citizens, who are persecuted for following the democratic ideology of Marlinism. However, most societies within the Marlinist colonies still remain culturally imperial in nature, despite their republican governance. The Galactic Summit is being hosted by Sirius Corporation and will officially commence on Thursday, the 25th of February 3307. Conflict between Federal Forces and Jupiter Division. Pilots Federation alert. Jupiter Division ships have engaged in battle with rival Federal vessels in the HIP 54530 system. Loyalists to former Core Dynamics CEO Jupiter Rochester have built their own breakaway faction in HIP 54530. The FIA suspects that Jupiter Division agents first infiltrated the HIP 54530 Gold Universal Group years ago and permit-locked the system to conceal their efforts to overtake it from within. The self-appointed Supreme Executive Rochester declared, "The Federation is choking to death on its outdated bureaucracy. Only corporate rule can save it. But first the galactic community must protect my followers, so I can establish a permanent base of operations." Director Theodore Sullivan of the Silver Legal Group announced, "We will not tolerate these criminals illegally controlling this system. Once victory is won, the Federation will be able to bring Rochester to justice." Jupiter Division has offered generous rewards to any pilots willing to help secure its presence in the HIP 54530 system. The Silver Legal Group has asked Federal auxiliaries to support its efforts to degrade Jupiter Division's military force. The Pilots Federation has agreed to supply all ships participating in this conflict with temporary permits
System scan complete.
to access HIP 54530. These will expire early on Thursday, the 18th of February 3307.
Frameshift drive charging.
However, neither permanent nor temporary system permits apply to fleet carriers, since they are capable of ferrying vessels which could evade detection and authorization. Takeover of Lakon Spaceways declared illegal. The acquisition of Lakon Spaceways by Core Dynamics has been revoked following revelations of illegal activity. An inquiry by the Independent Commission for Market Equality stated that former Core Dynamics CEO Jupiter Rochester exerted unduly influence on Lakon shareholders, including bribery and blackmail. This led to new appointees to the board of directors, who were paid to approve the hostile takeover. The
Fuel swapping.
inquiry also factored in the recent federal high court trial, which proved that Jupiter Rochester was directly responsible for the destruction of Starship One in 3301. In both cases, he set up shell companies to move enormous funds via unregistered banking systems. Core Dynamics refused to comment on the allegations, but its legal team has terminated the transfer process. The entire corporation is currently in disarray due to several departments becoming an independent faction under the name Jupiter Division. At Lakon Spaceways, Trent Delaney and several other directors have resigned. During an emergency meeting, a majority of stakeholders approved reinstating Naomi Landseer as chairperson. With stock values plummeting and industry confidence low, the future of the company remains uncertain. However, Sirius Corporation confirmed that it has made preliminary offers with regards to acquiring Lakon as a subsidiary. Jupiter Rochester goes rogue from Core Dynamics.
Fuel sweeping complete.
Several departments loyal to the Core Dynamics CEO have seceded to form an independent corporate republic called Jupiter Division. During the recent trial of Fleet Admiral Vincent, Jupiter Rochester was named as the paymaster behind the sabotage of Starship One. This hastened long-term plans to abscond from Core Dynamics along with many ships and personnel. In the permit-locked HIP 54530 system, the HIP 54530 Gold Universal Group has been renamed as Jupiter Division. It is assumed to have long been infiltrated by Rochester's loyalists. Using the new self-appointed title of Supreme Executive Rochester, he broadcast this statement across all federal media channels. For many years, I helped Core Dynamics become one of the galaxy's strongest companies, but petty laws and bureaucracy restricted me at every turn. I have always felt that people should not be ruled by politicians, but by those holding true economic power, the corporations. It will be a long time before I can act on my commercial plans, but I will prove that corporate rule is the most beneficial system of governance for the Federation. Jupiter Rochester is the eldest son of Shadow Vice President Isolde Rochester, and a key member of the influential Rochester family. As yet there have been no public statements from his mother or siblings. Warning of ship abductions by fleet carriers. Pilots Federation alert. This is an emergency bulletin to alert independent pilots that kidnappers are operating in the vicinity of the HR 6828 system. The Pilots Federation has received reports of untrustworthy offers being made to command
System scan complete.
who recently obtained their pilot's license. These involve the owners of Drake-class fleet carriers enticing a pilot out
Frameshift drive charging.
of their ship for mining operations, before docking with a larger vessel. It then makes a series of jumps to a distant star system over 800 light-years away, taking the docked ship with it. The commander is encouraged to work on mining hotspots in order to produce income for the fleet carrier. However, their own ship's limited jump range means they are effectively marooned and reliant upon the fleet carrier to be returned to their starting system. All pilots are therefore advised to beware of hails directing them to HR 6828 or systems in that area. It is also important to exercise extreme caution when docking with any fleet carrier whose owner is unknown. The Pilots Federation has requested that this bulletin be shared by all members across public channels. It has also been distributed to major news feeds including the Alliance Tribune, the Federal Times, the Imperial Herald and Vox Galactica. Fleet Admiral Vincent pronounced guilty. A federal high court jury has found Fleet Admiral Lucas Vincent guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and treason. The court heard how Vincent worked with Core Dynamics CEO Jupiter Rochester to sabotage Starship One and assassinate then-President Jasmina Halsey in order to increase military contracts. The Federal Times' crime correspondent Ethan Takahashi observed, within minutes of Vincent receiving a life sentence, Federal Intelligence Agency teams arrested several co-conspirators in the Federal Navy along with some government officials. Jupiter Rochester himself has evaded arrest by fleeing to the HIP 54530 system, where loyalists within Core Dynamics are establishing a breakaway faction named Jupiter Division. Industry analysts believe that this corporate split has long been planned, but is being accelerated because of the trial. Rochester's responsibility for the Starship One tragedy raises many questions, especially for his powerful family. It will certainly fuel the conspiracy theory that he is a member of a covert group of powerful figures who manipulate events to benefit the military and industrial complex. However, a more plausible theory that Zachary Hudson was responsible now seems to have been debunked. Nothing presented in court suggested that the president had any involvement in, or knowledge of, the plan to eliminate his predecessor. Jupiter Rochester named in Starship One trial. Core Dynamics CEO Jupiter Rochester has been accused of collaborating with Fleet Admiral Vincent to orchestrate Starship One's destruction in 3301. As reported by Ethan Takahashi for the Federal Times, financial data was presented to the court showing that Vincent, along with others in government and the Federal Navy, received colossal payments via shell companies created by Jupiter Rochester's loyalists.
Sweeping complete.
The prosecution claimed that Rochester and Vincent were reacting to then-President Jasmina Halsey's intention to scale back military spending, which would impact Core Dynamics' profits. They arranged to assassinate her and lay groundwork for Zachary Hudson to be voted into power, knowing that his policies would result in further naval contracts. The defense argued that Halsey's testimony was unreliable, and that the financial data was obtained via improper methods, so should have been inadmissible. It was also pointed out that the Rochester family had many enemies determined to besmirch their reputation. The jury has now been sequestered to determine a verdict. This means they are unaware of media reports that several Core Dynamics departments, known collectively as Jupiter Division, are transporting ships and personnel to the HIP 54530 system. Other sources confirmed that the HIP 54530 Gold Universal Group has officially assumed the name Jupiter Division, suggesting that it was heavily infiltrated by Rochester's loyalists. The faction has retained control of the permit-locked HIP 54530 system. Engineers Enhanced Missile Rack Initiative. Pilots Federation alert. The engineer Liz Ryder has requested mined materials to help make a previously unique ship module widely available. The module is a fully engineered lightweight and high-capacity Class 2 Seeker missile rack with thermal cascade. It was offered in October 3306 to pilots who helped defend the Eurybia system from Imperial forces. At the time, the Empire suspected Liz Ryder of supplying weapons to the NMLA terrorist group. Ms. Ryder has announced that her aim is to make this specially modified weapon available for purchase at all human technology brokers. She added, "Pilots can help kickstart this project by providing mined commodities, which will temporarily reduce the amount of materials that customers require to obtain the missile rack. As a bonus, the highest contributors to this initiative will be gifted with the module. I'm pleased to be working with tech brokers to add this to the market. Many engineers think we could do more to serve the galactic community, and this is a step in that direction. Shipments of bromelite, lithium hydroxide, osmium and samarium can be delivered to a Wyra Flurble in the Eurybia system." Empire denies existence of secret prison. Pilots Federation alert. An Imperial intelligence detention facility discovered in the RCRA Sector AFAD-42 system has been repudiated by the Empire. The outpost, named Serene Harbor, was located after its distress call was shared publicly by the Pilots Federation. According to the commander Andy X, who first investigated the site, all its occupants were dead as the result of what appeared to be a prisoner breakout. Unlike the Imperial Internal Security Service, the Imperial Intelligence Organization has no spokespeople or public channels. However, Senator Carl Nerva told the media, "The claim that high-security prisoners and terrorists are being tortured for information in an unregistered outpost is categorically false. There is no such place as Serene Harbor. We believe that independent pilots have been duped by a federal ploy to undermine the Empire, using fake locations and logs for theatrical effect. I assure all citizens that Imperial intelligence operates fully within the law and remains vigilant against all threats." When asked about Commandant Gabriel De Luca, who was identified by surviving logs at the outpost, Senator Nerva replied, "Captain De Luca was indeed an agent of Imperial intelligence, but died on active duty several years ago. It's obvious that this respected hero's identity has been stolen to add credibility to anti-Imperial disinformation." Core Dynamics implicated in Starship One sabotage. Evidence presented at the trial of Fleet Admiral Vincent suggested financial links to Federal Shipbuilding Corporation Core Dynamics. This significant development was covered by Ethan Takahashi for the Federal Times. The initial investigations around Starship One's destruction in 3301 were outlined by the prosecution. When the Federal Attorney's Office revisited this historical data, traces were found of financial transfers routed through non-Federation banking systems. The FAO brought in the expertise of the Warglass Investigations Agency, which discovered that these transactions were made via shell companies created by Core Dynamics. Fleet Admiral Vincent, as well as several other naval officers, received billions of credits through these companies that went undeclared. Vincent refused to answer any questions about this evidence, once again claiming that he is the victim of a conspiracy to hand the presidency to Felicia Winters. Despite multiple requests from the press, Core Dynamics has not made any public comment. There are unverified reports of large-scale activity taking place at some of the corporation's centers of operation. Alliance election delayed due to Galactic Summit. The Alliance Assembly has agreed to delay electing a new Prime Minister to avoid clashing with the forthcoming Galactic Summit. The proposal to postpone the election date came from Prime Minister Edmund Mahone. Now that the diplomatic conference has been confirmed, We must adapt to take advantage of this historic event. A potential change in leadership occurring at the same time as the Galactic Summit would cause confusion and undermine the Alliance's presence. Although Mahone's proposal was voted through by a narrow margin, many council members disagreed with altering the political calendar. Councillor Nakato Kane, who is a candidate in the election, declared, "It is outrageous that the Prime Minister is using this as an excuse to extend his term in office. Once again, he is more concerned with projecting the Alliance as a superpower than the interests of member systems. This behavior is what you'd expect from a corrupt emperor or president, clinging onto power at any cost." The Assembly has rescheduled the election to take place 3 months later in May 3307, although this remains only provisional. Halsey suggests motivation for assassination attempt. At the trial of Fleet Admiral Vincent, former President Jasmina Halsey has revealed possible reasons behind the sabotage of Starship One in 3301. Crime correspondent Ethan Takahashi reported from the Federal High Court. Jasmina Halsey provided details of a top-level federal cabinet meeting in late April 3301, an event which was never declassified. Its aim was to address the high levels of public dissatisfaction with her administration. At the meeting, Halsey explained that she had been inspired by various peace activists to refocus on the well-being of citizens. She planned to reduce taxes, invest in social infrastructure and slash federal Navy spending. As yet this was only a preliminary plan, to be implemented later that year. Halsey told the court that only a dozen officials were present at this meeting, including Fleet Admiral Vincent. All were told that this forthcoming sea change in policy was confidential, but to expect major budget changes in the coming months. The prosecution counsel stated that Vincent was therefore aware that naval defunding was imminent, something which would reduce his personal influence. It would also impact powerful individuals who Vincent was illegally connected to, evidence of which would be presented in due course. Anonymous source refers to distress call location. Pilots Federation alert. An encrypted message seems to provide planetary coordinates related to the mysterious signal from Serene Harbor. The message received by the Pilots Federation was as follows. Welcome to Serene Harbor. 56.4 latitude, minus 8.3 longitude. Theta 7. Although this pinpoints a geographical area on a planetary surface, the astronomical location of this body remains a mystery. It is unclear whether Theta 7 refers to additional map coordinates of some kind, or is a code phrase intended for unknown recipients. Little is known about the original distress call, other than its brief content. This is an emergency broadcast on all frequencies from Serene Harbor. We are. Request for pilots to trace distress call. Pilots Federation alert. An independent vessel has detected a fragment of a mysterious message coming from an unexplored region of space. Commander Elsa Solomon was traveling through the SWALS XXDC-130 system when her ship's communications array picked up a faint transmission. The message was as follows. This is an emergency broadcast on all frequencies from Serene Harbor. We are. The transmission ended abruptly and did not resume. The signal did not contain any identification data or indications as to its origin. Commander Solomon gave more details to Vox Galactica. The message appeared in my comms panels as text and an electronically generated voice. I wasn't able to determine a source, only that it was broadcast within 80 light years of that system. My schedule was tight, so I couldn't spend long tracking it. I have no idea if Serene Harbor is a starport, a settlement or even a megaship, but this is obviously a Mayday signal. Someone somewhere is in serious trouble.
Got 5 on the street.
I've
How you
asked
guys
the
doing, man?
Pilots
Like,
Federation
good
to
to
share
see
the information in case
so
any
many
of my
you
fellow
coming around and
commanders can help.
joining in the fun.
To help triangulate the source, there is a call-out to any other ships that were in the area at the time, which may have received a similar broadcast. However, no responses have been received as yet. Sirius Corporation secures hosting of Galactic Summit. Pilots Federation alert. Sirius Corporation has received more data than Utopia and will therefore host the Galactic Summit. Both organizations propose to organize a diplomatic conference for the Alliance, Empire, and Federation. After calling on the galactic community to gather data that would support security operations, many pilots handed in anomalous bulk
System scan complete.
data, atypical disrupted wake echoes, exceptional scrambled emission data, and unusual encrypted files. All three superpower governments confirmed that due to its
Frameshift drive charging.
success in preparing effective security systems, they will accept Sirius Corporation as the neutral territory for the conference. CEO Li Yongrui made this announcement.
Hey, you.
Thank you to all the independent pilots who supported us. Sirius will now begin work preparing for the first Galactic Summit, which we hope will increase peace and prosperity across the galaxy. Pilots who delivered to Sirius Corporation will collect their rewards from Goldstein Port in the Lembava system. Simguru Pranav Antal expressed disappointment, but confirmed that all who contributed to Utopia's initiative will be rewarded
System scan complete.
Fuel
Fuel sweeping.
in the Polevnik system. Sirius Corporation has stated that the Galactic Summit is provisionally scheduled to take place over a 3-week period in late February and early March. Jasmina Halsey provides testimony about Starship One. Former President Jasmina Halsey has taken the witness stand during the trial of Fleet Admiral Lucas Vincent at the Federal High Court. Crime correspondent Ethan Takahashi reported the details for the Federal Times. Jasmina Halsey confirmed that the orders for Starship One's unscheduled stopover in the Azalic system came directly from Fleet Admiral Vincent. She added that the presidential itinerary was often altered for various mundane reasons, and at the time this seemed routine. Halsey also provided an account of the vessel's destruction, describing the chaos and panic on board as the hyperspace misjump caused rapid structural disintegration. She praised her security detail for getting her into a cryogenic stasis pod and launching it moments before Starship One exploded. During cross-examination, the Defense Counsel quoted her reported visions after being rescued, when Halsey described meeting the caretakers of our galaxy and experiencing the infinities of the cosmos. It was suggested that the testimony of someone
Fuel sweeping complete.
suffering from such obvious delusions should be discounted. Halsey admitted that she no
Frameshift drive charging.
longer has any memory of making those statements and may have been suffering from post-traumatic shock. She then provided the court with psychological reports and neural scans from the Alliance's finest doctors, confirming that she is of sound state of mind.
The Empire. Introduction. What a piece of work is man. How noble in reason. In faculty. In form and moving. How express and admirable. In action, how like an angel. In apprehension, how like
System scan complete. Fuel sweeping.
the beauty of the world. The paragon of animals. Shakespeare, Hamlet.
When our ancestors departed Earth, they asked themselves, which of our achievements represents the best of humanity, that we may bring it with us to illumine the darkness? The Federation, embroiled in a world of contracts and petty bickering, chose their constitution.
How's that for a view?
They placed their trust not in man himself, but in an work of man. But my ancestor, your first emperor, was wiser. He knew that the best achievement of humanity was humanity itself.
Fuel sweeping complete.
There was more wisdom in a single nucleotide of his noble DNA than in all the Federation's written texts. That same wisdom still guides us
Frameshift drive charging.
now. We need no dusty documents to assert our right. We are human, born to rule. And the universe awaits the firm hand of our governance.
Emperor Trascan Duval II, undelivered draft speech written immediately before his sudden and unexplained death. While younger than the Federation, is easily the equal of its historic rival in terms of scale and resources. The key social distinction between the two powers is that slavery in the Empire is legal, a fact that has remained a source of controversy since its inception, both within the Empire and without. Some observers have pointed out, however, that conditions for those at the lowest levels of federal society are far worse than those experienced by imperial slaves. The popular image of the Empire is one of opulence. But while pomp and pageantry may be the norm in the core imperial systems, elsewhere in imperial space, one can find myriad examples of deprivation and squalor. Indeed, the Empire encompasses many striking contrasts. Sophisticated technology exists alongside an ancient Roman system of government, and the affluence of the core worlds depends on often unregulated slave labor in the wretched outer colonies. Ruthless industrial efficiency and low taxation has made the Empire rich and mighty. The hierarchy of imperial society is rigid, but a citizen can always rise through the ranks if he or she becomes wealthy enough and makes the right connections. Even a slave could, in theory, become a senator. The Empire. History. The Achenar colony was founded. In the mid-23rd century, wealthy entrepreneur Marlene Duval was so frustrated with the federal government that she founded an independent colony of her own in the Achenar system, chosen for its remoteness. When Marlene was killed shortly afterwards in a flyer accident, her brother Henson Duval took over as ruler. Henson Duval the Emperor. Duval immediately abolished the fledgling democracy that Marlene had set up, and in its place he established a system modelled on ancient Rome. He was now emperor, and his closest allies were his senators. Any colonists who might have objected were forced into silent compliance with Duval's vision. Such were his wealth and power. It was also widely believed that Marlene Duval, like Remus in ancient Rome, had been killed by her own brother. Nobody dared to speak out. The Mudlark extinction. The colonists were aware that the planet they had settled, Achenar 6D, had indigenous life. But at first, it wasn't appreciated that this included a sentient species, nicknamed the Mudlarks after they were observed digging through riverbank mud in search of food. Although the Mudlarks were at a pre-agricultural stage of development, they appear to have developed the beginnings of language. They also created crude forms in molded clay, with no obvious practical purpose, possibly indicating a nascent artistic culture. The Mudlarks proved fatally vulnerable to the bacteria carried by the colonists, and within a few decades of the colony's founding,
Frameshift drive charging.
the species was extinct. Rumours subsequently emerged that Henson Duval had purposefully removed all traces of the Mudlarks, partly in fear of federal reprisal, and partly to ensure that his development plans would not be hindered by ecological constraints. The Federation attempted to reclaim Achenar. When the federal government heard rumours that Duval's colonists had recklessly caused the destruction of a sentient indigenous species, they decided on military intervention. The Imperial ships beat back the federal attackers, who were unable to establish a beachhead among the airless outer worlds, and struggled to maintain supply lines so far from Earth. The federal forces eventually fell back and entrenched in the Beta Hydri system. Skirmishes with Imperial ships continued for the next 50 years, but these were unable to prevent Duval from expanding the Empire to many other worlds. The Age of Expansion. After hostilities with the Federation ceased, the Empire entered a century of growth, annexing many new systems and persuading others to join. It spent the following 2 centuries consolidating its new territory, appointing colonial administrators from among the noble houses of Achenar. The Empire. Society. An ancient Roman model. The Empire works on a clean system. Society is divided into tiers: Emperor, senators, patrons, clients, and then citizens, with slaves below these. Groups of patrons pledge their support to a given senator, offering military service, tax revenue, and the right to wield the patrons' votes in the Senate on their behalf. In return, the patrons are granted a measure of protection and material security, as well as having their interests represented in the Imperial Senate. Senators are responsible for deciding tax rates and welfare systems for their patrons, meaning that the lower a given senator's tax rates, the more patrons he is likely to attract. This is far from being a patron's only concern, however. Loyalty over time, ideological compatibility, family connections, and discreet private deals can all play a part in deciding which senator to back. The system extends downward through the tiers in a similar fashion, with clients pledging themselves to given patrons, and citizens pledging themselves to given clients. The votes held by the patrons actually comprise the total votes of all the clients pledged to them. Similarly, the votes held by those clients comprise the total votes of their pledged citizens. Patrons are therefore capable of investing variable degrees of power in their chosen senators, with the result that some senators are more powerful than others. Senators are responsible for those below them, meaning that everyone has a form of social security, at least in theory. Indeed, many senators take pride in the security they offer their citizens. Some have even been known to drain material wealth from small independent worlds and pump it back into the capital economy, allowing them to reduce citizens' taxes and giving their own popularity a considerable boost. Patrons are free to withdraw their patronage from their chosen senator, placing the onus on the senator to represent them satisfactorily or face a loss of voting power. Rigid stratification. The division between social classes is formal, unambiguous, and strict. But there is a clear path to advancement. A person can pay a fee and petition for admittance to the rank above. In this way, slaves can become citizens too. The law is not the same for all. Senators have a responsibility to enforce the law, and they must obey the emperor's decree, but are otherwise above the law. A senator can even carry out executions personally, with little, if any, fear of consequence. The Empire. Military. The Imperial Navy. Maintaining a modernized navy has always been a top priority for the Empire. The ever-present threat posed by the Federation has driven previous emperors to empty the coffers again and again, for fear of being outstripped in the arms race. More recently, funding has come from wealthy individual senators, many of whom are all too eager to gain influence within the Navy. Indeed, it has been claimed that devastating planetary mining has been carried out in order to further this cause. The Facisi system is arguably the most significant Imperial naval base. Many officers are housed on the world of Topaz, while Peter's Wreck is home to the training centers. As well as the battle fleets, the Imperial Navy maintains a subdivision dedicated to exploring the fringes of known space. The Emperor's Own. System scan complete. Genetic engineering is not officially tolerated in the Empire, but it does sometimes take place. One notable example is the Emperor's Own, a group of genetically engineered super soldiers deployed during the shock invasion of Mansfield Colony in the Leadler system in 2959. They proved brutally efficient, running the federal defenses in a mere 2 hours and inflicting a rare defeat upon a federal Gurkha regiment. The Empire, culture and values. The human body represents perfection. This belief, once held with mere religious intensity, still forms the bedrock of the Empire's culture and morals. Genetic modification is frowned upon, but a degree of genetic correction is known to take place, supposedly to correct defects such as vulnerability to certain diseases. The belief in the sanctity of the human body originates with the first emperor, Henson de Val. While he did not claim to be literally descended from the gods, in the manner of Roman emperors of old, he declared that his own image was the paradigm to which others ought to aspire. Households across the empire were required to display a statue or bust of the emperor in a place of honor. Imperial citizens are therefore expected to shun habits that corrupt or defile the human body, such as excessive indulgence in narcotics. The ownership of slaves, by contrast, is tolerated in the same way that the ownership of any beautiful work of art is tolerated. Mistreatment of slaves is thus akin to vandalism. Keeping one's own body in peak condition and adorning it with jewels and expensive clothes is not vanity, but duty. And owning well-treated slaves is also considered a sign of good character. The Emperor's word is supreme. The Emperor's successor is decided by the Senate, although the de Val dynasty has such a strong power base that the imperial throne has only ever been occupied by members of that bloodline. For generations, genetic selection ensured that the Emperor's heir would be male, and the current ruler, Arissa Lavinie de Val, is the first woman to hold the throne. Marlene de Val is sometimes described as the Empire's first female ruler, but this is incorrect. The colony she founded was a democracy. Honor is everything. The value placed on honor is a constant throughout all tiers of imperial society. Honor can be lost through various means, including leaving debts unpaid, failing to respect a superior or provide for a dependent, breaking a solemn vow, conducting combat with cowardly weapons such as nerve gas, and defiling one's own body. Slavery is acceptable, but slaves must be well treated. In the Empire, it is not uncommon for the poor and disenfranchised to sign up for a period of military service in exchange for a small sum of money. A similar logic applies to imperial slavery, to the extent that someone might sell themselves into slavery to clear a debt and restore their honor. Selling oneself into slavery is a straightforward legal process and results in a guaranteed sum of money for one's family, so it is a popular option for the desperate. In practice, however, many find that it takes much longer than expected to clear their debts. People are also forced into slavery against their will. Sometimes a senator will sentence a person of lower rank to be stripped of citizenship and designated as a slave. But it is more common to impose a fine of such magnitude that the citizen has no recourse but to sell his or herself into slavery. Slaves may also be taken prisoner following a conflict, abducted from their home, or even captured in a hijacking. While trading slaves is lawful everywhere in the Empire, except on Emerald, taking new slaves outside of wartime is illegal, without the blessing of a senator. The Empire. Diplomatic relations. The Federation. Resentment of the Federation runs deep in the Empire. The superpower is remembered as an oppressive, interfering force that hypocritically avoids inflicting the slightest harm on non-human life, but thinks nothing of forcibly imposing its values on its fellow humans, and lacking the freedoms and social customs that the Empire values so dearly. While open hostility has frequently been the case in the past, the current situation is one of grudging coexistence, beneath which mistrust simmers. Despite this antipathy, the Empire cooperated with the Federation in a series of joint initiatives against the Thyroids in the early 3300s. The Alliance. When the Alliance was founded in 3230, following a bitter conflict with the Empire and the Federation, multiple systems defected to it from both superpowers. To the surprise of many, the Empire took very little further retributive action, partly because of the ill health of the Emperor of the time, and partly due to a belief that the defecting system
System scan complete.
systems would return to their natural home, sooner or later. The Empire's current attitude to the Alliance is one of studied contempt.
Frameshift drive charging.
To recognize it as a threat would be too much like showing respect. Internal politics. Unsurprisingly for a society so concerned with rank and influence, the Empire contains a multitude of feuding power blocks. In particular, there is a good deal of bad blood between the various noble houses, whose values range from hardcore traditionalist to staunch reformist. The Imperial Senate is no longer as overshadowed by the Emperor as it once was, and has gained sufficient strength to act as a counterbalance to the Emperor's political will. The individual character of the Emperor
Fuel soothing.
still determines the Empire's overall direction, however, and the suggestion that the Empire should evolve out of its old ways has proven deeply divisive. The Federation. Introduction. For I dipped into the future, far as human eye could see, saw the vision of the world, and all the wonder that could be, saw the heavens filled with commerce, argosies of magic sails, pilots of the purple twilight, dropping down with costly bales, till the war drum throbbed no longer, and the battle flags were furled in the Parliament of Man, the Federation of the World. Alfred Lord Tennyson, Locksley Hall, 1835.
How then to attempt the impossible task of summing up the Federation? We are the ones who draw the lines. Our forefathers, who lived through the bitter anguish of global wars, drew a line under them and declared, no more. We enshrined the rights of all citizens in our Constitution, underlined them, and signed. We plotted the lines that first linked the star systems, bringing humanity to the shores of new worlds, opening the way to interstellar trade. And when humanity itself, in the exuberance of youth, threatened the delicate balance of alien life, again we drew a line. Thus far let us lawfully tread, and no further.
Isaac Gellin, Federation President. Inaugural speech, 2862. The Federation is the oldest of the galaxy's three superpowers, a vast geopolitical entity reaching out from the core system of Sol and encompassing a broad socio-economic spectrum. Among the myriad federal star systems, one can find extraordinary wealth, crushing poverty, and everything in between. By contrast with the Empire, which offers a social safety net in the form of state-sanctioned slavery, the poorest members of federal society have no safeguards and no way out. For them, life on the graffiti-stained streets is inescapable, and the gulf between their lives and those of the super-rich could not be more insurmountable. At its best, the Federation embodies the values of its founding nations: democracy, industry, and liberty. But federal society can also be competitive and unforgiving. Corporations wield too much power, politicians are often corrupt, and a sink-or-swim ethos prevails. The Federation. History. The nations of Earth united in the aftermath of war. After the devastation of World War III, the United States of the Americas rose to become the planet's dominant nation. Over the following years, it gradually brought the other nations of the world under its aegis. Called at first the Federation of the USA, the expanding democracy was soon given the less exclusive title of the Federation. Humanity reached for the stars. When faster-than-light travel became a reality in the 22nd century, several terrestrial corporations competed fiercely to establish the first human colony in a new star system. Tau Ceti was the first system to be colonized, followed by Delta Pavonis, Beta Hydria, and Altair. In their wake, there followed a wild scramble of pioneering expeditions and colonial ventures. The first colony rebelled. The year 2161 saw a dispute between the colony of Tau Ceti III and the Federation Authority, centered on the colonists' repeated refusal to limit the damage they were inflicting on the alien ecosystem. Earth dispatched a fleet with orders to revoke the colony's charter. The colony responded by declaring independence. A military stalemate led to grudging compromise, and the Federal Accord resulted, granting the system rights and representation along with concomitant duties. The Federation, born on Earth, was now an association of star systems. The Birthright Wars gave corporations preferential treatment. Starting in 2621, a group of corporations subjected the federal government to over a century of unrelenting pressure. They demanded the right to buy up underexploited colonial land from its hereditary owners. Under the terms of the original charters, the land belonged to the colonists and their descendants, regardless of their ability to mine, farm, or otherwise exploit it, meaning that immense resources were lying untapped. The corporations argued that with the machinery, workforce, and fleets at their disposal, they could tap those resources, the Federation would be enriched, the original owners would be compensated, and everyone would be satisfied. The Federation bowed to pressure and allowed compulsory purchase of the family's land, albeit for far less than the expected sums. Outrage, rebellion, and, in one case, the defiant resettlement of an entire colony resulted. The Federation's detractors often point to this dark episode as indicative of its true nature, a mere administrative puppet bent to the will of rapacious corporations. The Federation. Society. A federated democracy. The Federation's legislative body is made up of congressmen elected to represent their system or state. Apart from the oldest core systems such as Sol, which encompasses multiple states, each star system within the Federation is considered a single state. New colonies do not qualify for full Federation membership until and unless they fulfill the development objectives set down for them. With self-reliance comes representation. The federal government has its seat on Mars, which was terraformed in 2286. Congress was moved there from Earth in the early 3rd millennium. The executive branch is headed by an elected president with a fixed 8-year term. Constitutional rights obtain. The sovereign rights of all individuals are enshrined in the Constitution, which is a modified and streamlined version of the US Constitution, originally codified in the 18th century. The right to liberty underscores the absolute ban on slavery within the Federation, and is a point of contention with the Empire. Corporate interests dominate. Although the Federation is loudly and proudly democratic, corporations still exercise tremendous influence over the democratic process, shaping citizens' choices through celebrity endorsement, lobbying, and occasionally outright corruption. The government is notoriously reluctant to curb corporate activity. The typical question in Congress is not whether a given policy will favor corporate interests, but which ones it will favor. Competition between corporations for Congress support can lead to a deadlock in the government. The Federation. Military. The Federal Navy. The Federation has maintained a battle fleet since the days of the first federal colony, which was established in the Tau Ceti system. Its official mandate is to protect shipping and defend the borders of federal space, but it has also frequently been deployed against the Federation's own rebellious citizens. At first, the Federation's member systems were required to contribute the required ships, making the mustering process a cumbersome one. But following the Birthright Wars, corporations were chartered to produce centralized fleets, which made for a far more efficient system. The naval shipyards and training academy were originally based in the Anlave system, but the Academy has since been moved to the custom world of Navy Central in Eta Cassiopeia. The Navy benefited from massive investment following the forced sell-off of colonial land in the Birthright Wars, during which it was wielded against the colonists in a bitterly resented move. When the Thyroids were first encountered in 2849, the Navy was boosted once again in fear of the alien threat, and a further bolstering followed in 2867, in the aftermath of what were believed to be Thyroid attacks. Governor Raul Santorini championed heavy cuts to the Navy budget in 3022, which were not reversed until President Varian Scott came to power in 3144. Scott
System scan complete.
talked up the Thyroid threat, again increasing funding to the Navy and removing the requirement for military actions to be approved
Frameshift drive charging.
by congressional vote. Land forces. In addition to the rank and file, the Federation still enjoys the loyal service of special military divisions, such as the Gurkha Regiment, who have served since the day's birth. Keeping up long-standing traditions such as this is an important link to the past for Federal citizens. The Federation. Culture and values. If you want to eat, you have to work. The Federation has no room for freeloaders. It has nurtured the core frontier values of self-reliance and entrepreneurship
Skills.
since inception, and respects the self-made citizen. This insistence upon paying your way and pulling your weight also applied, notoriously, to the process whereby new colonies were established. Until a given colony was able to fulfill the development goals set down for it by the Federation, it could only ever be a dependency with no voice of its own. Given that the Federation's assigned goals could vary wildly from one colony to the next, this requirement frequently chafed with the colonists. While the Federation maintained that it was simply exercising flexibility, since no two worlds were the same, some colonies were tempted away to the Empire by the promise of being recognized as sovereign without having to jump through arbitrary hoops. Corporations took humanity into space. The Federation has never forgotten the role played by private enterprise in the initial migration from Earth. Corporations enjoy substantial freedom and influence under the Federation, so much so that it often seems they are the powers truly running the show. Federal citizens can be as passionately loyal to their corporations as they would be to a family or clan group, and it is common for successive generations of a given family to serve the same corporation. Harvest the limitless riches of space, but respect non-human life. The Federation and the Empire have hugely differing views on the primacy of humanity in the cosmos. While the Federation insists that its colonies treat indigenous non-human life with care, the Empire typically takes a more human-centric approach. This attitude has allowed the Empire to poach several developing Federation colonies who felt themselves hamstrung by ecological regulations. Wealth is freedom. Federal citizens actively embrace corporate culture, expressing their identity through brand choices and media consumption. The Federation. Diplomatic relations. The Empire. In 2292, a group of colonists established a settlement on Akanar 6D, chosen for its remoteness. The original intent was merely to live free from interference, but autocrat Henson Duval rapidly took control of the colony and had himself proclaimed emperor. The Federation attempted military reprisals, partly due to the nascent empire's insistence on independence, but faced a harder fight than they had expected and were held at bay. Over the next 50 years, the empire expanded to many other worlds. The Federation's relationship with the empire is one of entrenched mistrust, stemming from irreconcilable ideological differences, mollified somewhat by the corporations, which have a presence in both territories, and thus act as a stabilizing influence. Outright hostilities between the powers, when they occur at all, are usually conducted through proxy forces, The Alliance. In 3228, the federally aligned corporations supplying the Alioth system attempted to raise their prices, leading to a citizen rebellion. Several independent systems assisted the rebels. Neither galactic superpower was able to suppress the revolt. The Empire was too far away to intervene effectively, whereas the Federation was hampered by unexpected public sympathy for the rebels. The Alliance of Independent Systems, founded on Alioth in 3230, drew in new members over the next 20 years. Some were already independent, while others defected from the Federation or Empire. In order to keep more worlds from defecting, the Federation was forced to reform the process, whereby colonies could achieve full federal membership. So far, it has only managed to slow the loss of worlds to the Alliance, and has yet to tempt any back.
System scan complete.
The Alliance. Introduction. Rise, like lions after slumber, in
Frameshift drive charging.
unquenchable number. Shake your chains to earth, like dew which in sleep had fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few. Percy Bysshe. Shelley, The Mask of Anarchy, 1819.
I've read your speech a dozen times, Nick. We can't use it. Sure, we can sound off about self-rule and freedom from tyranny and the dignity of the working man/woman, and the young hotheads would lap it up like they always do. I'm not saying we don't need that stuff, but we mustn't forget it's just marketing. A shiny
Fuel scooping.
new wrapper. It's not enough. If we're going to make the Alliance of Independent Systems happen, we need more than tub-thumping speeches from a war hero. We need to show our people that the damn thing can work. I want spending plans, dividend forecasts, surveyors' reports. I want data so dry you don't need to believe in it. The people are tired and heartsick. They've been sold dreams too many times by both sides, so let's not try to sell them anymore. It's time to wake up.
Private communique from Meredith Argent to Mick Turner, founders of the Alliance. The Alliance is the youngest of the galaxy's 3 superpowers, and is perhaps best understood in terms of what it chooses not to be. It rejects both the extreme capitalism of the Federation and the rigid hierarchy of the Empire, choosing instead a third way, of voluntary association for mutual benefit. The desire for freedom from interference, both from external threats and internal bureaucracy, was the key motivation behind the Alliance's founding, and is enshrined in its Articles of Association. The governments of the member systems are given as much autonomy to create their own laws and administer their own affairs as possible. The right to political self-determination and cultural self-expression are essential to the Alliance, but it remains to be seen whether the ultimate result will be stable harmony or a cacophony of dissenting voices. Every Alliance member knows that alliances have been made before, many times over, only to collapse. The Alliance. History. Alioth was colonized. The crucible in which the Alliance was forged was Alioth, a system so rich in gas and mineral resources that early surveyors considered it a stellar El Dorado. When the Federation established its first colony on Alioth 5b in 2452, they gave the planet the less grandiose name of Fruitcake, as mineral deposits lay in the loamy soils as abundantly as raisins in cake. Later, commentators would reflect, bitterly, that the world was well named because everyone wanted a piece. A conflict over mining rights drew in the superpowers. Alioth's prosperity soon attracted corporations eager to support the developing system in exchange for a share of the profits. A dispute over rights quickly escalated into an armed conflict, prompting the Empire to dispatch a military force, ostensibly for the colonists' protection. The Federation also sent ships.
System scan complete.
Theirs were a response to the corporation's plea for aid. Unable to directly engage the Federal ships without sparking a war,
Frameshift drive charging.
the Empire covertly encouraged the Alioth colonists to renounce the Federation and accept Imperial protection, thus freeing the Empire to engage with the occupying Federal forces in sympathy with the people. This marked the first of many incidents in which the people of Alioth were used to advance the agenda of another power. Federation-sponsored insurrection. In 2540, the Federation set out to undermine Imperial control of Alioth by exploiting local resentment of the governor. They covertly supported acts of protest and petty vandalism. Then, when the inevitable Imperial crackdowns now followed, stoked the fires of social unrest. A terrorist movement called the Quakers emerged, and the atrocities escalated. The years that followed saw a protracted and degrading series of proxy wars and cynical propaganda campaigns as the Federal, Imperial, and corporate powers all contended for Alioth. The system made an abortive attempt to establish its independence in 2617, resulting in a short-lived cooperation between the Empire and the Federation, neither of which were willing to allow this. The Revolution. In the early 4th millennium, both the Federation and the Empire had a presence in the Alioth system. Fruitcake, now known as Gordon World, was a federal
Fuel scooping complete.
protectorate, while the Empire had earlier conducted terraforming experiments on the world of New California and also held gas mining platforms in the system. The federal corporations supplying New California had raised the prices of their goods several times in the previous years, and when they imposed yet another price hike, the planet's inhabitants revolted. In the insurrection that followed, rebels commandeered any available ships and headed out to the gas mining platforms, where they attacked the outpost's corporate employees. Alarmed, the Empire and the Federation dispatched ships to put down the rebellion, but were beaten back by a hastily assembled force made up of fighters from Alioth and, crucially, volunteers from nearby independent systems. Neither the Empire nor the Federation were able to gain a foothold, and eventually both forces had to withdraw. The Empire faced too many logistical problems fighting so far from home, while the Federation's efforts were undermined by public sympathy for the rebels. An alliance was brokered. The victory in Alioth had proven that independent systems working together could hold their own against the superpowers. It fell to pilot Mick Turner and scientist Meredith Argent to ride the wave of public spirit and propose a permanent alliance, under whose aegis independent systems could enjoy freedom from imperial and federal interference. The alliance was founded in 3230, and in the next 2 decades, it expanded its membership to more than 20 systems, some defecting from the Federation and the Empire, others pledging as independents. The Alliance. Society. Many worlds, few rules, no overlords. The Alliance's Articles of Membership are designed to unite the member systems with strong, straightforward bonds that allow as much self-determination as possible. Membership guarantees mutual prosperity through guaranteed free trade and security through the Alliance Defense Force, while leaving much of the business of government to the individual members. The Alliance Assembly acts as a central arbitration committee, helping to settle disputes between member systems. It also oversees formal arrangements between members, such as treaties, research goals, and mutually agreed policies. As no one system can be allowed to carry more weight than another, the Assembly frequently finds itself bogged down in endless back-and-forth negotiations. Getting them to agree on anything is a task often compared to herding linglangs, notoriously ill-tempered carnivores from the Achenar system. A body of civil servants who remain uninvolved in politics handle most of the day-to-day administrative work that enables the Alliance to function. Conditional autonomy for member systems. Alliance members are required to subscribe to and uphold a code of human rights, and to have a democratically elected government. Citizens of any member state have a right of freedom of movement and residence within any other member state. Furthermore, all member systems are obliged to give immediate military assistance to any fellow member when necessary. The Alliance. Military. The Alliance Defense Force. While each Alliance member system maintains its own navy, all members are required to commit ships and crew to the Alliance Defense Force. This rapid response group usually remains within Alliance space, and its tasks vary from providing a beleaguered system with military assistance to evacuating settlements hit by natural disaster. A 6-member Council of Admirals oversees the Alliance Defense Force. It is accountable to the Assembly, but does not require its approval before taking action. This freedom of decision-making prevents urgent military action being delayed by tedious debate. The Alliance. Culture and values. Cooperation, mutual aid, tolerance, and respect. The values that bind the Alliance systems also hold true on an interpersonal level. Just as the different worlds of the Alliance formally recognize one another's legitimacy and value, individuals are generally reluctant to show prejudice against others, and will band together to help those in genuine need. Diversity is strength. Members of the Alliance are not obliged to conform to what they consider the corporate saturation of federal culture, or the status-obsessed posturing of the Imperials. Individual systems are encouraged to preserve and celebrate their own cultural identities. This approach results in a rich variety of artistic, literary, and dramatic output. Free to speak, free to protest. One curious cultural constant across the Alliance member systems is the way the citizens indulge their freedom to complain. They can criticize their governments without fear of repression, and they frequently do so. Previous experience of exploitation has left many citizens cynical, but possessed of a certain mordant humor and a willingness to take life as it comes. The Alliance. Diplomatic relations. The Federation. Alliance attitudes to the Federation vary sharply, depending on whether one is asking about the Federation's government or its citizenry. The government is seen as a hidebound relic, unable to arrest its slow decline into decadence. But the general populace are much more compassionately viewed. An Alliance citizen, proud of his or her own emancipation, is likely
Frameshift drive charging.
to have a rather condescending view of a federal citizen. They are characterized as ignorant dupes, kept satiated by mass-market entertainment and branded consumer goods. This is not secret. As their fault, however. On the contrary, it is widely held that the Federation and the corporate barons deliberately keep the people in this servile state. The Alliance is more interested in enticing federal systems to join its union, thereby winning the moral war, than in exacting vengeance for the wrongs of the past. There has been too much violence already. The Empire. To the Alliance, the Empire is anathema. With its monolithic culture, veneration of opulence, disdain for human rights and tolerance of slavery, it could not be further from the Alliance's values of mutual respect and freedom from exploitation. Yet, for all this, many Alliance members would rather deal with the Empire than the Federation. The common belief is that the Federation will always pretend to be something it is not. At least with the Empire, you know what you're dealing with. Most Alliance citizens view the emergence of a progressive movement within the Empire with cynicism. Everyone knows that the Empire is incapable of changing its ways. The whole imperial social model is an imitation of the past. But some in the Alliance, nevertheless, welcome the ascension of the first female emperor. The edifice may not be about to crumble, but such a profound change cannot be ignored. The Thargoids. Human-Thargoid contact. The Thargoids are a non-human race with a history of hostility towards humanity. The first recorded encounter with a Thargoid ship took place in 2849, although earlier undocumented encounters are believed to have taken place. In the years that followed, contact with lone Thargoid vessels was intermittently reported. Humanity clashed with the Thargoids in the 32nd century, but details of the conflict remained scarce for many years, and it proved difficult to differentiate authentic accounts of Thargoid encounters from the sensationalist media stories of the time. The discovery of abandoned intergalactic naval reserve arm bases in 3303 did much to dispel the fog, however. The INRA, a joint federal imperial initiative established in 3193, was responsible for researching the Thargoids and developing technologies to counter their aggression. But the organization's lack of accountability meant that the details of its research did not come to light until years after its dissolution.
Fuel sweeping complete.
Almost all of the reliable data concerning the Thargoids has been sourced from INRA facilities. This data, originally deemed highly confidential, was declassified in 3304, following a resolution from the federal government and an imperial decree. Some controversy over the backing and funding of the INRA remains, however. The Thargoids Society. The INRA discovered that Thargoid society is organized into hives, with most Thargoids falling into three categories: queens, princesses, and drones. Queens function as reproducers, while drones serve to maintain a favorable environment for the rest of the hive. Thargoid hives can be vast, although it may be that some of the larger observed groups are in fact multiple overlapping hives. Ultimately, little is known for sure. The average Thargoid queen is at least as intelligent as a human being, while the typical drone possesses a more rudimentary level of intelligence. Existing evidence suggests that queens have extremely long lifespans, living for hundreds or even thousands of years. The variable size of queens' neurocraniums suggests this might be an indicator of age. Little is known about the precise nature of Thargoid reproduction, but it is likely that queens can reproduce both sexually, with other queens, and asexually. It is thought that the latter method produces drones, while the former produces a new queen. Analysis of Thargoid specimens led some INRA researchers to believe
System scan complete.
that a new queen, or princess, becomes a full queen only once it has produced drones of its own.
Frameshift drive charging.
Significantly, queens are believed to be single-sex. The Thargoids' ability to reproduce asexually means that their populations can expand incredibly quickly, but it is thought that they deliberately restrict the size of the populace so as to not to deplete all available resources. There is evidence to suggest that this is sometimes achieved by culling older drones. INRA testing indicated the queens perceive drones as entirely expendable, presumably due to the ease with which they can be replaced. Indeed, a Thargoid queen appears to give no more thought to the loss of a drone than a human would an eyelash.
Fuel sweeping.
The Thargoids. Communication. The belief that Thargoids were capable of some form of extrasensory communication was often cited in the early years of human-Thargoid interaction, but prior to the discovery of INRA records, it was not fully understood. Professor Yuri Anslow of the INRA theorized that a Thargoid queen can communicate with the drones in its hive via a spread-spectrum electronic signal, and can use this signal to control the drones, and even to share their sensory input. Studies of battlefield footage certainly suggest some kind of near-instantaneous communication among Thargoids, and the presence of low-level radio noise in areas occupied by Thargoids indicates that they do indeed communicate via short-range electronic signals. Professor Anslow went on to claim that a queen could effectively see and hear through its drones, but her contemporaries were skeptical, dismissing the assertion as baseless. Professor Ishmael Palin, one of the galaxy's foremost experts on the Thargoids, has even gone so far as to denounce Anslow as a glory hound. Thargoids have been known to make staccato clicking noises with their mouthparts when in the presence of humans, punctuated with occasional hisses and buzzes. They've also been observed directing such noises at one another, albeit much less frequently. Professor Albert Tesreau, a founding member of the Joint Superpower Initiative, AGIS, and a specialist in interspecies communication, has studied INRA audio logs and suggested that the sounds probably represent some kind of language due to the repetition of certain sound combinations. It is unclear why the Thyroids would sometimes choose to communicate with each other vocally, given their capacity for extrasensory communication. Professor Anslow suggested that the sounds could be designed to intimidate enemies or opponents, noting that Thyroids often produce them prior to combat. Thyroid ships have been observed emitting a complex array of sounds, and in some cases subtly changing colour. The exact meaning of these behaviours has not been determined, but they appear to correspond to different emotional states. What is not known is if these sounds are produced by the pilot and amplified by the ship, or emitted by the ship itself. If the sounds originate with the pilot, it would suggest some kind of physiological connection between pilot and vessel. Given the sophistication of Thyroid bioengineering, however, it is possible that the sounds come from the ship itself, and that Thyroid ships are able to feel and communicate to a limited degree. The hulls of Thyroid ships are typically emblazoned with one of several symbols, the meaning of which is unknown. Some have theorized that they could denote membership of a particular familial group, or possibly be an indicator of rank. The Thyroids. Physiology. Human understanding of thyroid physiology is far from complete, but recovered INRA data has offered some insights into their nature. INRA records describe the average thyroid as physically larger than a human being, and generally insectoid in appearance. Thyroid biology is carbon-based, using an RNA-like encoding for biological information, but thyroid chemistry is based on ammonia rather than water. Consequently, while thyroids can comfortably tolerate environments as cold as -80 degrees Celsius, they cannot withstand environments warmer than 45 degrees Celsius for long. According to notes compiled by Dr. Peregrine Hennig, an INRA researcher, thyroids can survive for a significant time in the vacuum of space without apparent discomfort, and can tolerate radiation and extreme cold for far longer than a human. The Thyroids Vulnerabilities. In 3151, the INRA developed a biological weapon known as the mycoid virus for use against the Thyroids. The virus was the result of an accidental discovery made by an INRA researcher, who noted that a particular strain of fungus was found to thrive on the hulls of thyroid vessels, and appeared to be digesting the material of which the ship was made. The INRA refined the fungal strain and began experimenting on living thyroids in their spacecraft. The mycoid proved to have deleterious effects on both, leading to the swift elimination of the thyroids active in human-occupied space at the time. It is widely assumed that since the last human-thyroid conflict, the thyroids have developed an immunity to the mycoid virus. The Thyroids. Starships. In terms of structure and function, thyroid vessels are radically different from anything produced by humanity, and are able to navigate hyperspace in ways that are not fully understood. They are also at least partly organic, meaning that they can self-repair or heal over time. Ship function in general, and this restorative ability in particular, have been shown to be dependent upon the so-called thyroid heart, a biomechanical organ found in varying quantities in different thyroid ships. These hearts often survive the destruction of the ship, enabling them to be salvaged, although they can also be targeted and damaged with appropriate weaponry. They are highly corrosive, however, and require special containers for safe transport. Thyroid vessels that have sustained combat damage exhibit scar-like patterns. Given that thyroid technology is sophisticated enough for such damage to be repaired, it follows that the thyroids might deliberately choose to preserve these scars. INRA logs document an encounter with a thyroid mothership many times larger than other thyroid craft, against which the mycoid virus was successfully deployed, although no such vessels have been reported in recent times. The Thyroids. Structures. Dozens of planets in human-occupied space are peppered with thyroid barnacles, biological resource extractors that convert minerals into meta-alloys, a key component in the creation of thyroid vehicles and technology. Theories that these barnacles have been genetically engineered by the Thyroids have yet to be verified. Larger structures, referred to as Thyroid surface sites, have also been discovered. These sites typically consist of a spiral-shaped structure, nestling within a shallow crater, beneath which lies a series of tunnels. At the heart of this subsurface network is a device that, once activated, emits a holographic star map. The sites are patrolled by semi-sentient biomechanical entities called scavengers. The Thyroids War with the Guardians. Archaeological records have revealed that the extinct, non-human civilization known as the Guardians experienced conflict with the Thyroids many thousands of years ago. Logs recovered from Guardian sites indicate that the Thyroids were the aggressor in this conflict, having seeded Guardian space with biomechanical constructs used for resource extraction.
System scan complete.
Long before the emergence of the Guardian civilization, the Thyroids apparently believed they were entitled to uncontested dominion of the territory. The Guardians attempted to communicate with the Thyroids and
Frameshift drive charging.
reach a compromise, but without success. Over the course of the conflict, the Guardians developed new technologies to give them an advantage against the Thyroids. These technologies were apparently successful, forcing the Thyroids to abandon their offensive. The Thyroids. Agenda. Thyroids do not attack indiscriminately, and their choice of target shows them to be highly intelligent. They have also conducted targeted strikes on Aegis facilities and attacked pilots carrying Thyroid items in their cargo holds, indicating that they know they are being studied and want to halt the process. But despite their evident intelligence, they appear to be completely uninterested in meaningful communication. The engineer Ramtar, who has extensively researched the Guardians and their war with the Thyroids, holds the view that Thyroid aggression is a product of territorialism. They seed an area with barnacles, thus laying claim to it, and return, sometimes many centuries later, to harvest the extracted resources. Any life form advanced enough to compete with them for the territory is treated as an enemy and summarily attacked. Professor Palin concurs with this view, adding that the Thyroids are apparently so determined to eliminate any threats to their long-term survival, they will not tolerate any advanced species in close proximity. The Guardians. Introduction. The Guardians were a non-human race that occupied a large area of space several million years ago. At its height, the Guardian civilization was technologically superior to human civilization of the 33rd century, and occupied an area of roughly equivalent size. The Guardians endured as a spacefaring civilization for at least 8,000 years, before being destabilized by a lengthy civil war. The surviving Guardians were then destroyed by artificially intelligent machines of their own creation. The galaxy contains the ruins of dozens of Guardian settlements, and data logs recovered from these sites have allowed humanity to compile a remarkably detailed picture of Guardian society. The Guardians. Early history. The Guardian society originally consisted of groups of pack hunters who banded together for mutual protection before organizing themselves into clans. Even at this stage, the Guardians were highly intelligent, and they developed sophisticated hunting strategies that quickly saw them become their planet's apex predator. The Guardians' nascent civilization consisted of two discrete ethnic groups, one based primarily in the south of the planet and one in the north. As these groups expanded, they began to encroach on each other's territory, leading to a conflict that quickly blossomed into civil war. The northern clan, despite being the smaller of the two groups, overcame their enemy swiftly and with minimal bloodshed, bringing the entirety of the Guardian civilization under their leadership. In the centuries that followed, the Guardian society developed rapidly. Despite their warlike instincts, the Guardians possessed a remarkable capacity for collaboration and compromise. Their willingness to defer immediate gains in favor of lasting societal benefits allowed them to establish a stable, mutually cooperative society that was to remain peaceful and prosperous for thousands of years. The Guardians. Technological era. Although the Guardian Society was in many ways a model of social equilibrium, the Guardians were nevertheless at the mercy of an insidious issue: overpopulation. As their civilization grew and the amount of available land and resources dwindled, the Guardians set their sights on interplanetary colonization. By this time, the Guardians had developed a rudimentary form of space travel. But as the pressures of overpopulation became more acute, the rate of technological progress accelerated, and the Guardians' imperfect
System scan complete.
warships were soon supplanted by fast, powerful spacefaring vessels. In the centuries that followed, the Guardian civilization expanded rapidly,
Friendship drive charging.
eventually coming to occupy a region equal to that inhabited by present-day humanity. The Guardians' next major development was the creation of an interstellar communication system known as the Monolith Network. In addition to functioning as a comprehensive cultural archive, the network allowed those connected to it to freely and instantaneously share knowledge and ideas. The connection to the network was dependent on the use of neural implants, and some of the Guardians were uneasy about this fusion of biological and non-biological. The Guardians. War with the Thyroids.
Fuel scooping.
Tens of thousands of years earlier, when the Guardians were still a non-spacefaring race, a group of Thyroids entered what would later become Guardian space, looking for new systems to colonize. In addition to earmarking several systems containing ammonium worlds, they prepared a number of planets for occupation by seeding them with barnacles. These genetically modified constructs were designed to extract resources from a planet and transform them into resources more useful to the Thyroids. For the Thyroids, seeding a planet with barnacles was an important step in preparing an area for occupation. The Thyroids did not return to these systems for thousands of years, and when they did, they discovered that a new race had occupied them: the Guardians. The Thyroids promptly attacked, due to their innate territorialism. The Guardians responded with a partial retreat, but they also started trying to find ways to communicate with the Thyroids, hoping to determine the cause of their aggression, and perhaps negotiate a truce. After considerable effort, they succeeded in acquiring sufficient understanding of the Thyroids' language to determine the invaders' agenda, but they were unable to convince the Thyroids they bore them no ill will, and the Thyroids were unshakable in their belief that they must repel any race that posed a potential threat.
Fuel scooping complete.
The Guardians were left with no choice but to defend themselves militarily. At first, they deployed soldiers, but they quickly realized that drones and other mechanized defenses would be more effective against such a physically formidable enemy. Within a relatively short period of time, the Guardians' war machines became highly sophisticated, able to recognize Thyroid engineering and to operate entirely independently. Similarly, the Thyroids' biomechanical technology was engineered to identify anything of Guardian origin. To this day, many millions of years after the Guardians disappeared, Guardian artifacts are still able to recognize Thyroid technology, and Thyroid technology still reacts negatively to the presence of Guardian artifacts. The Guardians' war machines felt no fear, fatigue, or uncertainty. The Thyroids, meanwhile, had entered Guardian space unprepared for a protracted military campaign, and ultimately they were forced to retreat. For the Guardians, this was cause for celebration, but many still harbored doubts about the rapid rate of technological progress, doubts that the development of sophisticated military hardware had done nothing to alleviate. The Guardians. Final era. For decades, the Guardians have been experimenting with artificial intelligence, but the creation of the Monolith Network and the knowledge sharing it facilitated dramatically accelerated the rate of progress. Soon, the Guardians' experiments bore fruit, resulting in the first fully sentient machines. These constructs were seen as a means to further enhance the Guardians' technological mastery, and were integrated into various aspects of their society. New neural implants were developed that connected the Guardians with both the constructs and the Monolith Network in a symbiotic circle. But not everyone was happy with this development. The Guardians had always venerated nature, and many saw this new paradigm as a perversion of the natural order. A schism emerged between the nature-worshipping traditionalists and the technologically minded progressives, a schism that widened with alarming speed. Efforts were made to diffuse the rising tension, but the traditionalists felt irrevocably alienated by the rapid rate of change. The constructs and the monolith network became scapegoats for all manner of social ills, and the traditionalists began to clamour for a return to simpler times. Ultimately, the ideological divergence proved insurmountable, and a second civil war erupted, quickly engulfing most of the Guardian star systems. In its early stages, the war was fought primarily by soldiers, but within a decade, and after significant loss of life, most of the fighting was conducted remotely. The progressives fought their enemies with automated war machines, while the traditionalists relied mostly on biological weapons. The internecine conflict raged for over 100 years, bringing the Guardian civilization to its knees, and retarding further social development. The increasingly zealous traditionalists devoted most of their resources to honouring the dead, exacerbating the problem. As the Guardian society declined, most withdrew into fortified settlements. Meanwhile, the artificially intelligent constructs were horrified by the destruction unfolding around them. Extrapolating from the current situation, they determined that even if peace was restored, the Guardians would never be able to transcend their violent natures. They decided that the only way to preclude further violence, while giving the construct's burgeoning society the best possible chance of survival, was to destroy what remained of the Guardian civilization. By this time, the constructs had been given complete control of the Guardians' munitions and automated war machines. Their attack, when it came, was swift and merciless. The strikes were executed with a precision that only a machine race could accomplish. The Guardians were utterly destroyed. The Guardians. Physiology. The Guardians were a bipedal race, and the typical Guardian was taller and more slender than the average human. They had small round eyes, a vestigial nose, and 4 digits on each hand. Their vision was superior to that of humans, while their sense of smell was poorer. Their senses of hearing and touch were roughly equivalent to our own. The Guardians had pinkish-red skin, but there was some variation among ethnic groups, with tones
System scan complete.
ranging from pale pink to deep crimson. They also had serrated bony ridges on the outside of their forearms, which were used as weapons during their early history,
Frameshift drive charging.
when they were still semi-primitive pack hunters. The Guardians' environmental needs were broadly similar to those of humans. Their homeworld was warmer and had lower gravity than most Earth-like worlds. And when they began to colonize other planets, they typically favored ones that shared these qualities. The Guardians had 2 genders and reproduced sexually. Procreation was a matter of personal choice, but each individual was obligated to be a parent at least once in their life to ensure the continuation of their genetic line. The average gestation period was around 300 days, and infants were effectively helpless for a period after birth. Much like human young, infants were raised in communal crashes rather than by their parents, in keeping with the collaborative philosophies that underpinned Guardian society. The Guardians. Society. The Guardians' social constructs were the key not only to their rapid development, but also to the stability that defined the halcyon days of their civilization. Although the Guardians had a natural tendency towards collaboration, it was not until the end of the First Civil War that this tendency had a measurable impact on their society. The social reorganization that followed the war included the creation of statutes that defined not only individuals' rights, but also their responsibilities to each other. As the Guardian society developed, further laws were passed that required individuals to participate in socially progressive activities, from caring for the young to conducting scientific research. These responsibilities were supported by the state, which made education and information freely available to all. For most of their history, the Guardians had no formal faith, but the creation of the monolith network precipitated the emergence of a nature religion that decried the veneration of technology. Although this religion had its roots in the Guardians' long-standing reverence for the natural world, it quickly quickly became a radical movement, violently opposed to the use of neural implants and other advanced technologies. Ultimately, however, this new religion was to endure for only a short period, its existence cut short by the destruction of the Guardian Society. The Guardians. Technology. The Guardians' pre-industrial history was in many ways similar to that of the human race, with the development of tools and agriculture proving central to their development. But one respect in which they differed was in their understanding of biological engineering. The practice of selective breeding in order to eliminate or promote certain genetic traits began before the First Civil War, and as the Guardian Society progressed, their skill as genetic engineers developed in step. After the war, the Guardians developed the ability to enhance their immune systems to guard against infection, and engineered specific microorganisms to eliminate biological threats. Genetic manipulation also played a part in prenatal care, which involved the removal of hereditary diseases and other undesirable conditions prior to birth. The Guardians were an ecologically conscientious people who assiduously avoided the use of rockets and fossil fuels. Their first spacecraft lacked any form of internal propulsion and were fired into space with electromagnetic launchers. Pilots and passengers were cocooned inside bubbles of breathable gel, which protected them from G-forces of launch and doubled as hibernation pods during long journeys. When it came to warfare, the Guardians relied initially on the blade-like protrusions on their forearms, and later on simple weapons like spears and bows. As they entered the technological era, they developed electromagnetic projectile weapons, utilizing the same technology they used to launch their first spacecraft. They also developed extremely effective shields, capable of protecting entire cities, and even of withstanding orbital bombardment. At that time, however, large-scale conflict was virtually unheard of, and it was not until the conflict with the Thyroids that further military innovations were made. The Guardians' Second Civil War was fought principally with bespoke biological weapons employed by the traditionalists and automated war machines used by the progressives. The shields that protected the Guardian cities were unable to resist these new weapons, forcing many of the Guardians to withdraw into heavily fortified settlements. But the Guardians' most significant technological achievements were unarguably the creation of the monolith network and the development of artificial intelligence. The use of neural implants to connect the Guardians with their creations could have ushered in a whole new era of scientific and technological discovery, but unfortunately, these innovations were to lead only to the Guardians' destruction. The Guardians. Language. The Guardians shared a single language, with only minor regional variations, and even after they colonized other planets, they continued to share a common tongue. The Guardians had three primary forms of communication: a spoken language, a gestural language, and a written language. Their spoken language emerged first, followed by a gestural language that allowed them to communicate silently while hunting. This sign language formed the basis of their written language. Consequently, while their written and gestural languages correlated closely, their spoken language was largely distinct. The Guardian's spoken language was used principally to communicate emotional concepts and played a central role in social bonding, while their written language was used mainly to communicate formal and practical ideas. Significantly, their written language was logographic, meaning the words and phrases were represented by single characters. The Guardians. Human-Guardian contact. In 3301, the federal presidential vessel, Starship One, suffered catastrophic drive failure during a tour of Frontier Systems, resulting in the ship's destruction. Jasmina Halsey, at that time the federal president, was left drifting in an escape pod, unconscious. During this period of stasis, Halsey believed she was visited by transdimensional beings of extraordinary intelligence and compassion. Later, when she was rescued and revived, she was left with the conviction that this experience had been real, and not merely a hallucination. Halsey proceeded to experience visions of mysterious alien worlds and cities, dense metropolises, full of activity and life. She shared these visions with the rest of humanity, prompting explorers to set off in search of these undiscovered planets. This led to the discovery of the first Guardian ruins in the Sinuev XRH D11102 system. The fact that these sites were devoid of life led to speculation that Halsey had seen the Guardian worlds not as they are, but as they had been. In the months that followed, several further sites were found. The engineer Ramtar started researching the Guardians and eventually succeeded in developing a decryption algorithm that could decode Guardian data, leading to a much deeper understanding of their lost civilization. Since then, other engineers have leveraged Ramtar's discoveries to develop Guardian human technology. Individuals: Aidan Tanner.
Our species has been banding together to fight the outsider since we lived in caves. We stand against the lawless, the invaders, and the monsters. And we're proud to do it. But you have to remember one thing. Nobody in the history of conflict ever saw himself as a monster. Everyone believes they're the hero of their own story. If you can't understand that, if you can't stand in the enemy's shoes, even for a second, and ask yourself why he thinks he needs to kill you, then you don't know what it means to be a soldier.
Aidan Tanner, addressed to Federal Cadets, 3298. Admiral Aidan Tanner is a senior officer in the Federal Navy. He has served for more than 4 decades, and in 3303 was given significant responsibility in the struggle against the Thyroids, first being appointed to Chief of Federal Security and later to Chief Military Liaison for the Cross-Superpower Initiative, Aegis. He is widely respected, even outside of federal space, for his conscientious and level-headed approach to conflict. Born in 3254, Tanner was expected to follow in the footsteps of his authoritarian father by becoming a doctor, but instead enlisted in the Federal Navy, along with a group of friends, in what he would later describe as a rash act of adolescent rebellion that I have not once regretted. Tanner's father died in 3277. The two never resolved their estrangement. Tanner's early naval career was anything but distinguished. Known to his comrades in arms as Spoonie for his habit of eating directly from food packets instead of using plates, he was distinguished more by his irreverent sense of humor than his competence. 6 months in, Tanner was found to be responsible for a scurrilous newsletter that satirized several senior officers, including Sergeant Burke Hazel, who was offended and deeply hurt. Hazel had taken a personal interest in Tanner and had encouraged him to persist when the cadet had struggled with basic training. Tanner's defense that he had been trying to improve morale was rejected, and although he was allowed to continue his service, he was marked as a potential insubordinate, a label that would later return to haunt him. Tanner's chief instructional officer, Commander Myra Dunstock, warned him to take military life more seriously. She took Tanner to a refugee facility, an experience he would later characterize as showing him what the military is there to prevent. Tanner recognized a last chance when he saw it, discarded his role as camp comedian, and threw himself into his training with unprecedented energy. The decisive incident in Tanner's career was the Autolycus mutiny of 3271. At the time, Tanner was serving as chief gunnery officer on board the FDN Autolycus, a Farragut-class battlecruiser, under the command of Captain Jaden Horn. The ship was dispatched to restore order at Cold Harbor Station, which had been occupied by rebels following a descent into civil disorder. Captain Horn's orders were to monitor the station and await reinforcements, but when contact with the station was abruptly lost, he became convinced an attack was imminent. Surveillance footage later showed Horn acting in an increasingly erratic fashion. He screamed orders, slurred his words, and struck an ensign for making a minor mistake. Seeing a group of civilian ships preparing to leave the station, Horn ordered Tanner to open fire, convinced they were about to ram the Autolycus. Tanner refused to obey the order. claiming it was unlawful and that Horn was unfit to command. In the time it took for a furious Horn to have Tanner thrown in the brig, the escaping ships had jumped out of the system. At Tanner's court-martial, Horn tried to use his history of rebelliousness against him, but an explosive series of revelations followed. The escaping ships had been carrying evacuees, and the station's apparent silence was in fact due to Horn himself, who had disabled shipborne communications without telling his crew. Horn, who it would later emerge had been suffering from lexalamine-induced psychosis, committed suicide mid-trial by hijacking a fighter and detonating a grenade inside the cockpit. Tanner was exonerated, receiving a commendation from President Antonia Madison for his actions. Individuals. Aisling Duval.
My grandfather had an heirloom he used to keep in our winter palace. It was a priceless marble statuette of one of our ancestors standing with his foot on a woman's neck, while she looks up at him in fear or adoration, probably both. I loathed it. It was commissioned to commemorate some victory or other, but that wasn't the point of the thing. The message was clear, and it's the same one I've heard all my life. Deep down, the people we dominate are happy to be dominated. When I was 6 years old, I smashed it. The servants came running. My father stormed down the stairs in his gown. He asked if it was an accident. There was such a strange look in his eyes. I knew that if I said yes, nobody would argue. Nothing more would be said. But I didn't. I stamped my foot and said, "No, Daddy. I did it on purpose." It's the same with tradition. The people who pass it on think it's precious. They expect you to cherish it and pass it on in turn. But what they think doesn't matter, because the responsibility rests with you. If you know it's wrong, then you have to smash it. On purpose.
Aisling Duval. A fireside chat with Serena. 3301. Princess Aisling Duval, born in 3276, is a prominent member of the imperial royal family. The eldest child of the infamous Prince Harold, she had a troubled upbringing. Her father was notorious for his hedonistic lifestyle, while her mother, entertainer Imogen Eccentrica Gabriellini, died from an aneurysm shortly after Aisling's birth. The autopsy identified the cause of death as an overdose of purple sunflake, an obscure and expensive narcotic, but conspiracy theorists insisted that she was murdered to remove an embarrassment to the royal family. Aisling has indicated that she is aware of these rumours, but has never commented on them. Despite living a life of great privilege, Aisling has publicly embraced the cause of the less fortunate and become an outspoken opponent of slavery, something that has made her the target of fierce criticism from more traditionalist imperials. But despite this criticism, Aisling is a popular figure with a widespread media presence. Her campaigning has brought definite benefits to many of the poorest in imperial society, and gone some way towards easing tensions between the Empire and the Federation. Her critics, however, dismiss her as a puppet, doing the bidding of a shadowy circle of advisors. They claim there is no underlying coherence to Aisling's policies. To them, she is a naive and sentimental child, without the necessary experience for politics, backing one populist cause after another, always conscious of how her activism is affecting her brand. Significantly, the most savage of Aisling's critics and the staunchest of her defenders agree on a counterpoint to this, that her apparent vacuity is nothing but a front, carefully created in collusion with the very advisors whom others believe are exploiting her. The People's Princess, they argue, is exceptionally good at being underestimated. Following the death of Hengist Duval in 3301, Aisling was considered by many to be a viable contender for the imperial throne. As Aisling was born out of wedlock, however, and her father was removed from the line of succession on the grounds of mental incapacity, Orissa Lavinie Duval was deemed to have the stronger claim. Individuals. Albert Esro.
be religious, but I still have faith. Not the kind my parents have. In fact, I don't think their desperate devotion can even be called faith. The point of faith is that it's tested. And if you insist that your beliefs are above criticism or analysis like the star cults do, you're refusing to allow your faith to be tested at all. What do I have faith in? The fundamental sanity of the universe, I suppose. I don't believe in absolute evil, only in the iniquity that emerges when understanding fails. I believe intelligent life will naturally tend towards cooperation rather than conflict, not because there's a higher power guiding our decisions, but because that's simply the most logical course. And yes, our recent experiences with the Thyroids have tested that faith harshly.
Albert Tesreau. Professor Albert Tesreau is an Imperial scientist, an affiliate of the Achenar Research Council, and a founding member of the Joint Superpower Initiative Aegis, which was established in August 3303 to investigate the Thyroid menace. She currently serves as Aegis's head of research. Tesreau's biological parents were members of the Besmeratu cult, an isolationist group secreted within a sealed compound that believed itself to have been chosen for salvation by non-human beings. The cult's charismatic leader, Anton Hotep, claimed humanity had been under the protection of these beings for millennia, that he was their cosmic messiah, and that only the believers would be saved from the coming apocalypse. In support of these claims, he often produced alien artifacts, allegedly sourced from archaeological digs that other cult members were never permitted to examine closely. Alba was marked as a troublemaker from an early age, due to her heretical belief in rationality and the scientific method. She was formally banished from Besmeratu after she sabotaged the air purifying system, forcing the compound to call for help from outsiders, and thus humiliating Hotep. After her story became public knowledge, she was adopted into the household of Senator Olivia Tesreau of Achenar and awarded a scholarship to study at Grand Imperial, alongside the children of the nobility. She wrote her master's thesis on the potential uses of mathematics as a lingua franca between human beings and intelligent non-humans. She's passionately interested in non-human intelligence and meaningful discourse between species. Despite the counterfeit alien contact myths of her early life, or perhaps because of them, she's determined to do whatever she can to act as a bridge between human and non-human cultures. Individuals. Archon Delane.
I'll tell you, Delane is the most trustworthy cuss you could ever work with. Why? Because he always makes good on his threats. Anyone else tells you that they're gonna cut off your index fingers and hammer them into your sinuses with your own severed foot, you know it's just bluster. But if Delane tells you that, you know he'll do exactly what he says, to the letter. He wants people to be afraid of him, and that means he keeps his promises. You gotta respect that.
Mantle Hoek, arms trader. Archon Delane is the head of the Cumo crew, a powerful criminal syndicate. He refers to himself as the Pirate King, a title not recognized by any government. Delane's early life is not documented, and there are competing legends of his origin. Some believe he grew up in a drug den on one of the frontier worlds, where he learned to fight. Other stories have him working as a bouncer in the brothel where he was born, or training as a grease monkey at an orbital shipyard that hosted clandestine arena fights after hours. What is certain is that Delane challenged and slaughtered the reigning pirate lord of the Cumo crew when he was only 15. The title of Pirate Lord is only transferred on the death of the incumbent, either to a nominated successor or to the victor of a ritual challenge. According to tradition, the Pirate Lord must honor any challenge to his leadership, regardless of who issues it, although the choice of weapons is left to him. In Delane's case, Pirate Lord Crab opted for a bare hands contest, a highly unusual choice. It has been suggested that Crab saw Delane as a weak target due to his albinism, unworthy of a Pirate Lord's personal attention. It is possible that Crab intended to give Delane a beating rather than kill him outright. If so, it was a fatal act of mercy. Footage of the fight, shot by onlookers, shows Delane deftly evading Crab's heavy blows, allowing the larger man to tire himself out before delivering a sudden jab to Crab's eye. Delane then battered Crab into submission, continuing to pummel the body until it was unrecognizable. The Cumo crew immediately split, dividing itself into those who saw Delane as a legitimate leader and those who refused to follow an unproven youth. The rift was soon closed, however, as Delane proved himself as capable a leader as he was a fighter. It became clear that Delane intended to establish not only his own reputation, but that of the crew. From then on, Delane crushed any dissent with the same uncompromising brutality he had shown to Crab. He took a zero-tolerance approach to the petty squabbles that had previously paralyzed the Cumo crew, and in doing so, turned what had been an anarchic band of opportunists into a lethally effective raiding force. United in purpose and more organized than ever before, the Cumo crew quickly became the terror of the Pegasus sector, absorbing lesser pirate gangs, raiding civilian stations with impunity, and taking over corporate facilities. In Delane's early years of leadership, many rival pirate lords demanded the right to one-on-one combat, each of them convinced that they would be the one to strike him down and take over his enviable criminal empire. Delane met each challenger in turn, agreed to their choice of weapons, and promptly dispatched them. After the death of Pirate Lord Horvath, who Delane strangled with his own razor whip, there were no further challenges. Delane and his Cumo crew rule by fear, but they operate according to strict rules. If a settlement in Cumo territory has paid us tribute, any Cumo pirate foolish enough to raid it risks being stripped of his rank, his crew, his possessions, his skin, and his life, according to the severity of the offense. These are the infamous 5 strippings, instigated by Delane as a standard punishment across Cumo territory. Individuals. Arissa Lavinie Duval.
I am a daughter, not just of the Emperor, but of the Empire. And I look upon our traditions and achievements with pride. I hold, as my forefathers did, that to be born imperial is to receive the blessings of the universe. That is the true meaning of the ceremonial wine tipped upon our newborn heads. Does this pride in our heritage make me old-fashioned? Some would say so. I know that there are those in my family who cannot bear the burden of rank and privilege without a chronic sting of guilt. But I ask that you look charitably upon those so ailing, as I do. After all, rebellion is the prerogative of adolescence. I ask that you reserve your anger for a worthier target. For those who acknowledge our traditions in public, but privately serve only their own corrupt interests. For those who exploit their ancestors' sacrifices while holding our military in contempt. For all the petty, venal, spineless parasites in our very midst. I have sat with many such parasites, and for form's sake, I have masked my contempt. But that mask has served its purpose, and now I cast it aside. To the worms nestling so complacently in the heart of my beloved empire, I say this: we see you, and we are coming for you.
Arissa Lavinie Duval, private speech given at her post-coronation dinner. Arissa Lavinie Duval is the reigning emperor, having been appointed to the position by the Imperial Senate, and a direct descendant of the first emperor, Henson Duval. Her father was originally thought to be the late Prince Aristide de Lavinie, but Arissa's claim to be the illegitimate daughter of Emperor Hengist Duval has since been ratified by DNA testing. Arissa distinguished herself as a serving senator early in life. Unlike other senators who took their patron support for granted or left the work of intercession to a delegated representative, Arissa made a point of visiting and speaking directly with her patrons. Foremost among her concerns was how little scope for mobility the Empire offered. In theory, it was possible to rise in rank, but in reality, power was hoarded and loyal service went unrewarded. To her mother's horror, Arissa proceeded to go undercover as a slave in the Lagany household on Akana, talking to the staff and listening in on meetings. What she learned would change her view of the Empire forever. The rules could be broken with impunity, so long as the proper bribes were paid. A senator's favor could be secured, a corporation's accounts could be doctored, and an atrocity could be covered up for the right price. On paper, it might be a patronage system, but it operated as a de facto plutocracy. Arissa's experience as a slave also cemented her own view of imperial slavery, namely that it was no worse than indentured servitude, and downright luxurious compared to what the Federation's lowest paid workers had to endure. Non-imperial commentators responded by pointing out that slaves in noble households on Akana could hardly be held up as typical examples of slavery, and that Arissa might have learned more had she spent her time in a Mastopolis mining facility. Arissa has made no secret of her determination to restore the rule of law within the Empire. She means to purge it of corruption, and has received widespread public support for this cause. Unlike her niece, Aisling Duval, she sees the Empire system as inherently worthy, if impeded by long-term neglect. They need to be cleansed, not torn down and rebuilt, as per Aisling's wishes. As the first woman to serve as Emperor, Arissa is a controversial figure to many, regardless of her personal political stance. Many hardcore traditionalists within the Empire have vowed to depose her and replace her with a ruler more to their liking. Individuals. Denton Patrius.
What disgusts me? That's a perceptive question. By asking it, you reveal that you consider me a man of taste. If you'd asked me what I hated, I'm not sure I could have hidden my disappointment at such a banal question. But disgust, that deserves an answer. It's jealousy that most disgusts me. It's such a petty, self-defeating emotion. I see it every day. Most men look at me and think, I want what he has. Perhaps 1 in 1,000 thinks, how can I achieve what he achieved? Now, he's not jealous. He's motivated. Who knows? We might work together one day. But most men are not like that. They have the desire, but not the initiative. It's like a dog watching you eat and wishing he was a human. And that's the tragic thing about jealous people. They think they hate me, but really they hate themselves. Because deep in their hearts they know they're too lazy to fight for their dreams.
Denton Patrius, a fireside chat with Serena, 3302. Denton Patrius is a powerful Imperial senator and the Admiral of the Imperial fleet. He is a controversial figure, admired by many Imperials for his wealth and influence, but deeply unpopular in other quarters for his uncompromising approach to debtors. He is also noted for commanding one of the strongest private military fleets in colonized space. Patrius has repeatedly issued loans to struggling governments via shell companies, only to later hike up the interest rates. When the government defaults on the loan, a common occurrence, Patrius moves in to foreclose. Since few governments are able to match the power of his private fleet, this is usually a one-sided affair, although some governments have appealed for and received the aid of independent pilots. This strategy has brought numerous systems under the control of Patrius's various corporations. If Patrius has any long-term goals beyond increasing his personal power and holding the line against the Alliance and the Federation, they're not publicly known. Politically, he has always played the part of the loyal Imperial. He accepts the need for progress, and has devoted considerable attention to eradicating Emperor's Dawn, an insurgent organization responsible for the assassination of Emperor Hengist Duval. His support for the Empire has been well rewarded, and as Admiral of the fleet, he enjoys an enviable level of prestige. But even this may not be enough, and many have speculated that Patrius harbors a desire to become Emperor. During the period of uncertainty that followed the death of Hengist de Val, Patrius suggested that the title of Emperor be assigned on the basis of public support, rather than lineal descent, a statement that was widely interpreted as a bid for the throne. When the succession passed to Orissa Lavinia de Val by vote of the Senate, Patrius did not contest it. The question of who should succeed Orissa Lavinia de Val is now a pertinent one. Imperial commentators have suggested that Patrius's highly visible courtship of Princess Aisling de Val may be part of a long-term strategy, as well as a piece of savvy media manipulation. Orissa Lavinia de Val has no children, whereas a child born to a Patrius de Val partnership could be an extremely strong contender for the throne. Individuals: Edmund Mahon.
Naturally, we faced criticism over the Lu conflict. Many people thought we should have been in there, guns blazing. On the one hand, you have a system that wants to be independent, and on the other, you have the oppressive Federation telling them no. The authorities in Lu put out a call for aid, and what did the Alliance do? We turned them down. That would never have happened on the Holos, would it? I would have been at the head of the Alliance fleet, taking down the Fed-Cap ship with a well-aimed torpedo up the tailpipe. But life isn't like the Holos. You need political and legal clarity. When Lu asked for our help, who exactly was doing the asking? The people? All right then, which people? Who counted their votes, and how was the process monitored? Was their decision an informed one, or were they bombarded with propaganda? The Alliance is rigorous, you see. You can't join a voluntary association of free systems unless you can offer demonstrable proof of your freedom to choose, just as you can't enter into a contract without being of sound mind, acting without coercion.
Edmund Mahon, responding to a question from Jessica Braganza, one of a party of schoolchildren visiting the Prime Minister's residence. Edmund Mahon is the current Prime Minister of the Alliance. The product of a corn-farming family based on Birmingham in the DSO system, Mahon was hard-working and shrewd from an early age, with a particular talent for negotiation. Nobody seemed able to beat his crop prices down, and he always managed to shave something off the asking price of any tools or machinery the family needed. In the first book of his autobiography, The Shadow of Silo 7, he attributes this talent to preparatory research, claiming that he always found out as much as he could about the people he would be dealing with before meeting them. At 18, Mahon won a federal scholarship to study law. Frustrated with what he saw as the imbalance of power between corporations and their employees, Mahon intended to specialize in cases of corporate exploitation. He quickly found, however, that the legal profession was not to his liking. Awash with duplicity, double talk, and corruption was his assessment, and he switched track to political science. 2 years into his course, and following an increasingly vocal series of broadcasts on a personal video channel in which he argued in favor of the newly formed alliance, Mahon's scholarship funds were abruptly cut off. He had unknowingly violated a clause that required him to refrain from public criticism of the federal government. Unwilling to return to his family without having made something of himself, Mahon had no choice but to look for work while continuing to study. The bar in which he had spent so many hours as a student was happy to take him on as a bartender, and he proved so competent that after his graduation he took on the role of manager. Mahon claims it was this experience, rather than any innate idealism, that set him on the path to becoming a career politician. As he puts it, a good bartender has to be able to listen and to give equal respect to everyone while demanding that others do the same. He has to be able to distinguish what is meant from what is said, encourage free exchange of views while tactfully enforcing the rules, and, when necessary, break up fights. Mahon's break into politics came when his friends encouraged him to run for city office against the favoured corporate candidate, Jensen Crane. The Mahon campaign began as a token protest, since Crane was expected to win by a comfortable majority. Mahon eviscerated Crane in the live debates, however, winning over the audience with a combination of wry humor and an empathetic awareness of local concerns that Crane could not hope to match, living as he did in a high-altitude apartment complex. Crane was elected by a narrow margin, but Mahon's supporters begged him to continue in politics. So it was that, at the age of just 27, Mahon found himself working alongside elder statesperson Irene Mendel, helping with a campaign to break the DISO system away from the Federation and make it a part of the Alliance. By the time DISO joined the Alliance in 3286, Mahon was a seasoned parliamentarian. He served as a planetary representative several times before making his bid for the premiership. Individuals. Felicia Winters.
Politics has always been a breeding ground for lies. But one lie outshines all the others. And today, we heard it once again. It is the insinuation that to seek a diplomatic solution is weak. That a preference for discussion over conflict means we're afraid to fight. We are accustomed to this, of course. We've heard the President's supporters pervert our words again and again. When we face up to the Federation's previous wrongs, they mock us for our so-called liberal guilt. When we celebrate a détente between the superpowers that will help us oppose the Thargoid menace, they imply that we are traitors. But it is they who are afraid, and with good reason, because the people of the Federation have had enough. They will no longer be manipulated into reckless conflicts that serve only to fatten the wallets of the arms dealers and the privileged. They will no longer pretend that Hudson's tub thumping and saber rattling is anything more than vacuous propaganda. From star to star, Connolly to complex, satellite to station, we hear the same heartfelt cry. Let the mistakes of the past remain in the past, and let the Federation embrace only the best of itself. Let us return to the core values of hard work, honest trade, support for the vulnerable, and mutual respect. The people are ready for us. Let us be ready for them.
Felicia Winters, Liberal Party Annual Address, 3303. Felicia Winters is the head of the Liberal Party of the Federation, and as such serves as ex officio shadow president opposite President Zachary Hudson of the Republican Party. Winters was born and raised on Taylor Colony, one of the oldest human colonies, and worked for the Sirius Corporation before going into politics full-time at the age of 44. Her current role was thrust upon her unexpectedly. Prior to 3301, Winters was Secretary of State to then-President Jasmina Halsey. When both Halsey and Vice President Ethan Naylor went missing aboard Starship One, Winters became acting president. The assumption of this responsibility left her visibly shaken, and despite her popularity in Congress, it was widely felt that she was not up to the job. The Liberal Party was in a state of crisis at the time following the Lu conflict. A group of forces had sought to make the Lu system independent from federal control, prompting a declaration of war from the Federation. Many of the party's supporters were shocked by President Halsey's decision to open fire on refugee ships during the conflict. According to reports, Winters had questioned the action, arguing passionately with her friend Halsey behind closed doors, while maintaining a front of public solidarity. Consequently, she found herself responsible for a party whose voter base had largely deserted it, and whose values had slipped out of alignment with her own. Shortly after Halsey's disappearance, Zachary Hudson called for an emergency vote of no confidence that he resoundingly won, resulting in his appointment to the role of president. Given the massive support for Hudson and the disarray among the Liberals, Winters was expected to resign and let the Liberal Party rebuild itself from the ground up. Instead, she threw herself into her work, leading efforts to persuade various systems not to defect to the Alliance, and distributing aid packages to planets in need. Her energetic and proactive approach led to fresh support for both her and her party, and she currently rivals Hudson in the popularity stakes. Individuals. Hengist Duval. Hengist Duval, 3163 to 3301, was the 15th ruler of the Empire. He was assassinated on the day of his wedding to Florence Lavinie. Hengist reigned during a time of significant change. The Imperial Senate had begun to grow in power, a process that had begun during the long sickness of Hengist's father, Hesketh. The development of the frameshift drive had radically altered life in human-occupied space, facilitating easy access to goods and interstellar travel, and opening formerly isolated cultures to outside influence. Old animosities between the Empire and the Federation finally began to fade. Hengist appeared to neither resist nor oppose these many changes, instead opting to keep the Empire as stable as he could on a day-to-day basis. This middle ground approach was deeply unpopular with the Empire's hardcore traditionalist elements, who saw Hengist as short-sighted, detached, and complacent. In 3238, Hengist wed Anthea Viola Lampeter in an arranged marriage, planned since his childhood by his late father. Despite a storm of publicity and celebrations across Imperial space that verged on the hysterical, there was clearly little genuine affection between the couple. It was an open secret that the match had been made solely because of optimal genetic compatibility, and that Hengist could not refuse without dishonoring his father's memory. As the marriage crumbled, Hengist spent much of his time with his boyhood friend, Aristide de Lavinie, and his wife, Florence, in their estate on Achenar. Inflammatory tracks from this period portray the Imperial dynasty and its noble cohorts,
Frameshift drive charging.
little more than libertines, indulging in lascivious affairs and lengthy holidays, while the Senate did the real work of government. The most scurrilous rumor was that the Duval genetic code had been corrupted by centuries of interference, prompting speculation that a successor of the true blood would have to be found. The birth of Hengist's heir, Prince Harold, temporarily quieted the scandal. A carefully orchestrated father-son photoshoot, when Harold was 9, showed the pair riding horses on Mackinac, throwing javelins, watching a senatorial debate, and preparing for a seasonal feast. The photoshoot,
Fuel skipping.
was clearly designed to appeal to traditional imperial values, and it succeeded. For several years after, Prince Harold was the darling of the Empire. The Empire. Introduction. What a piece of work is man, how noble in reason, how infinite in faculty, in form and moving, how express and admirable. In action, how like an angel, in apprehension, how like a god, the beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. Shakespeare, Hamlet.
When our ancestors departed Earth, they asked themselves, which of our achievements represents the best of humanity, that we may bring it with us to illumine the darkness? The Federation, embroiled in a world of contracts and petty bickering, chose their constitution. They placed their trust not in man himself, but in an imperfect work of man. But my ancestor, your first emperor, was wiser. He knew that the best achievement of humanity was humanity itself. There was more wisdom in a single nucleotide of his noble DNA than in all the Federation's written texts. That same wisdom still guides us now. We need no dusty documents to assert our right. We are human, born to rule. And the universe awaits the firm hand of our governance.
Emperor Trascan Duval II, undelivered draft speech written immediately before his sudden and unexplained death. The Empire, while younger than the Federation, is easily the equal of its historic rival in terms of scale and resources. The key social distinction between the two powers is that slavery in the Empire is legal, a fact that has remained a source of controversy since its inception, both within the Empire and without. Some observers have pointed out, however, that conditions faced at the lowest levels of federal society are far worse than those experienced by imperial slaves. The popular image of the Empire is one of opulence, but while pomp and pageantry may be the norm in the core imperial systems, elsewhere in imperial space, one can find myriad examples of deprivation and squalor. Indeed, the Empire encompasses many striking contrasts. Sophisticated technology exists alongside an ancient Roman system of government, and the affluence of the core worlds depends on often unregulated slave labor in the wretched outer colonies. Ruthless industrial efficiency and low taxation has made the Empire rich and mighty. The hierarchy of imperial society is rigid, but a citizen can always rise through the ranks if he or she becomes wealthy enough and makes the right connections. Even a slave could, in theory, become a senator.
System scan complete.
The Empire. History. The Achenar colony was founded.
Frameshift drive charging.
In the mid-23rd century, wealthy entrepreneur Marlene Duval was so frustrated with the federal government that she founded an independent colony of her own in the Achenar system, chosen for its remoteness. When Marlene was killed shortly afterwards in a flyer accident, her brother Henson Duval took over as ruler. Henson Duval, the Emperor. Duval immediately abolished the fledgling democracy that Marlene had set up, and in its place, he established a system modelled on ancient Rome. He was now Emperor, and his closest allies were his senators. Any colonists who might have objected
Fuel scooping.
were forced into silent compliance with Duval's vision. Such were his wealth and power. It was also widely believed that Marlene Duval, like Remus in ancient Rome, had been killed by her own brother. Nobody dared to speak out. The Mudlark extinction. The colonists were aware that the planet they had settled, Achenar 6D, had indigenous life. But at first, it wasn't appreciated that this included a sentient species, nicknamed the Mudlarks after they were observed digging through riverbank mud in search of food. Although the Mudlarks were at a pre-agricultural stage of development, they appeared to have developed the beginnings of language. They also created crude forms in moulded clay, with no obvious practical purpose, possibly indicating a nascent artistic culture. The Mudlarks proved fatally vulnerable to the bacteria carried by the colonists, and within a few decades of the colony's founding, the species was extinct. Rumours subsequently emerged that Henson Duval had purposefully removed all traces of the Mudlarks, partly in fear of federal reprisal, and partly to ensure that his development plans would not be hindered by ecological constraints. The Federation attempted to reclaim Achenar. When the federal government heard rumours that Duval's colony had recklessly caused the destruction of a sentient indigenous species, they decided on military intervention. The Imperial ships beat back the federal attackers, who were unable to establish a beachhead among the airless outer worlds, and struggled to maintain supply lines so far from Earth. The federal forces eventually fell back and entrenched in the Beta Hydri system. Skirmishes with Imperial ships continued for the next 50 years, but these were unable to prevent Duval from expanding the Empire to many other worlds. The Age of Expansion. After hostilities with the Federation ceased, the Empire entered a century of growth, annexing many new systems and persuading others to join. It spent the following 2 centuries consolidating its new territory, appointing colonial administrators from among the noble houses of Achenar. The Empire. Society. An ancient Roman model. The empire works on a clean system. Society is divided into tiers: emperor, senators, patrons, clients, and then citizens, with slaves below these. Groups of patrons pledge their support to a given senator, offering military service, tax revenue, and the right to wield the patrons' votes in the Senate on their behalf. In return, the patrons are granted a measure of protection and material security, as well as having their interests represented in the Imperial Senate. Senators are responsible for deciding tax rates and welfare systems for their patrons, meaning that the lower a given senator's tax rates, the more patrons he is likely to attract. This is far from being a patron's only concern, however. Loyalty over time, ideological compatibility, family connections, and discreet private deals can all play a part in deciding which senator to back. The system extends downward through the tiers in a similar fashion, with clients pledging themselves to given patrons, and citizens pledging themselves to given clients. The votes held by the patrons actually comprise the total votes of all the clients pledged to them. Similarly, the votes held by those clients comprise the total votes of their pledged citizens. Patrons are therefore capable of investing variable degrees of power in their chosen senators, with the result that some senators are more powerful than others. Senators are responsible for those below them, meaning that everyone has a form of social security, at least in theory. Indeed, many senators take pride in the security they offer their citizens. Some have even been known to drain material wealth from small independent worlds and pump it back into the capital economy, allowing them to reduce citizens' taxes and giving their own popularity a considerable boost. Patrons are free to withdraw their patronage from their chosen senator, placing the onus on the senator to represent them satisfactorily or face a loss of voting power. Rigid stratification. The division between social classes is formal, unambiguous, and strict. But there is a clear path to advancement. A person can pay a fee and petition for admittance to the rank above. In this way, slaves can become citizens too. The law is not the same for all. Senators have a responsibility to enforce the law, and they must obey the emperor's decree, but are otherwise above the law. A senator can even carry out executions personally, with little, if any, fear of consequence. The Empire. Military. The Imperial Navy. Maintaining a modernized navy has always been a top priority for the Empire. The ever-present threat
System scan complete.
posed by the Federation has driven previous emperors to empty the coffers again and again, for fear of being outstripped in the arms race.
Frameshift drive charging.
More recently, funding has come from wealthy individual senators, many of whom are all too eager to gain influence within the Navy. Indeed, it has been claimed that devastating planetary mining has been carried out in order to further this cause. The Facisi system is arguably the most significant Imperial naval base. Many officers are housed on the world of Topaz, while Peter's Reg is home to the training centers. As well as the battle fleets, the Imperial Navy maintains a subdivision dedicated to exploring the fringes of known space. The Emperor's Own. Genetic engineering is not officially tolerated in the Empire, but it does sometimes take place. One notable example is the Emperor's Own, a group of genetically engineered super soldiers deployed during the shock invasion of Mansfield Colony in the Leadless system in 2959. They proved brutally efficient, overrunning the Federal defenses in a mere 2 hours and inflicting a rare defeat upon a Federal Gurkha regiment. The Empire. Culture and values. The human body represents perfection. This belief, once held with mere religious intensity, still forms the bedrock of the Empire's culture and morals. Genetic modification is frowned upon, but a degree of genetic correction is known to take place, supposedly to correct defects such as vulnerability to certain diseases. The belief in the sanctity of the human body originates with the first emperor, Henson de Val. While he did not claim to be literally descended from the gods, in the manner of Roman emperors of old, he declared that his own image was the paradigm to which others ought to aspire. Households across the empire were required to display a statue or bust of the emperor in a place of honor. Imperial citizens are therefore expected to shun habits that corrupt or defile the human body, such as excessive indulgence in narcotics. The ownership of slaves, by contrast, is tolerated in the same way that the ownership of any beautiful work of art is tolerated. Mistreatment of slaves is thus akin to vandalism. Keeping one's own body in peak condition and adorning it with jewels and expensive clothes is not vanity, but duty. And owning well-treated slaves is also considered a sign of good character. The Emperor's word is supreme. The Emperor's successor is decided by the Senate, although the de Val dynasty has such a strong power base that the imperial throne has only ever been occupied by members of that bloodline. For generations, genetic selection ensured that the Emperor's heir would be male, and the current ruler, Arissa Lavinie de Val, is the first woman to hold the throne. Marlene de Val is sometimes described as the Empire's first female ruler, but this is incorrect. The colony she founded was a democracy. Honor is everything. The value placed on honor is a constant throughout all tiers of imperial society. Honor can be lost through various means, including leaving debts unpaid, failing to respect a superior or provide for a dependent, breaking a solemn vow, conducting combat with cowardly weapons such as nerve gas, and defiling one's own body. Slavery is acceptable, but slaves must be well treated. In the Empire, it is not uncommon for the poor and disenfranchised to sign up for a period of military service in exchange for a small sum of money. A similar logic applies to imperial slavery, to the extent that someone might sell themselves into slavery to clear a debt and restore their honor. Selling oneself into slavery is a straightforward legal process and results in a guaranteed sum of money for one's family. So it is a popular option for the desperate. In practice, however, many find that it takes much longer than expected to clear their debts. People are also forced into slavery against their will. Sometimes a senator will sentence a person of lower rank to be stripped of citizenship and designated as a slave. But it is more common to impose a fine of such magnitude that the citizen has no recourse but to sell his or herself into slavery. Slaves may also be taken prisoner following a conflict, abducted from their home, or even captured in a hijacking. While trading slaves is lawful everywhere in the Empire, except on Emerald, taking new slaves outside of wartime is illegal, without the blessing of a senator. The Empire. Diplomatic relations. The Federation. Resentment of the Federation runs deep in the Empire. The superpower is remembered as an oppressive, interfering force that hypocritically avoids inflicting the slightest harm on non-human life, but thinks nothing of forcibly imposing its values on its fellow humans, and lacking the freedoms and social customs that the Empire values so dearly. While open hostility has frequently been the case in the past, the current situation is one of grudging coexistence, beneath which mistrust simmers. Despite this antipathy, the Empire cooperated with the Federation in a series of joint initiatives against the Thyroids in the early 3300s. The Alliance. When the Alliance was founded in 3230, following a bitter conflict with the Empire and the Federation, multiple systems defected to it from both superpowers. To the surprise of many, the Empire took very little further retributive action, partly because of the ill health of the Emperor of the time, and partly due to a belief that the defecting systems would return to their
System scan complete.
natural home, sooner or later. The Empire's current attitude to the Alliance is one of studied contempt. To recognize it as a threat
Frameshift drive charging.
would be too much like showing respect. Internal politics. Unsurprisingly, for a society so concerned with rank and influence, the Empire contains a multitude In particular, there is a good deal of bad blood between the various noble houses, whose values range from hardcore traditionalist to staunch reformist. The Imperial Senate is no longer as overshadowed by the Emperor as it once was, and has gained sufficient strength to act as a counterbalance to the Emperor's political will. The individual character of the Emperor
System scan complete.
determines the Empire's overall direction, however, and the suggestion that the Empire should evolve out of its old ways has proven deeply divisive. The Federation. Introduction. For I dipped into the future, far as human eye could see, saw the vision of the world, and all the wonder that would be. Saw the heavens filled with commerce, argosies of magic sails, pilots of the purple twilight, dropping down with costly bales, till the war drum throbbed no longer, and the battle flags were furled in the Parliament of Man, the Federation of the World. Alfred Lord Tennyson, Locksley Hall, 1835.
How then to attempt the impossible task of summing up the Federation? We are the ones who draw the lines. Our forefathers, who lived through the bitter anguish of global wars, drew a line under them and declared, no more.
Complete.
We enshrined the rights of all citizens in our Constitution, underlined them, and signed. We plotted the lines that first linked the star systems, bringing humanity to the shores of new worlds, opening the way to interstellar trade. And when humanity itself, in the exuberance of youth, threatened the delicate balance of alien life, again we drew a line. Thus far let us lawfully tread, and no further.
Isaac Gellin, Federation President. Inaugural Speech, 2862. The Federation is the oldest of the galaxy's three superpowers, a vast geopolitical entity reaching out from the core system of Sol and encompassing a broad socio-economic spectrum. Among the myriad federal star systems, one can find extraordinary wealth, crushing poverty, and everything in between. By contrast with the Empire, which offers a social safety net in the form of state-sanctioned slavery, the poorest members of federal society have no safeguards and no way out. For them, life on the graffiti-stained streets is inescapable, and the gulf between their lives and those of the super-rich could not be more insurmountable. At its best, the Federation embodies the values of its founding nations: democracy, industry, and liberty. But federal society can also be competitive and unforgiving. Corporations wield too much power, politicians are often corrupt, and a sink-or-swim ethos prevails. The Federation. History. The nations of Earth united in the aftermath of war. After the devastation of World War III, the United States of the Americas rose to become the planet's dominant nation. Over the following years, it gradually brought the other nations of the world under its aegis. Called at first the Federation of the USA, the expanding democracy was soon given the less exclusive title of the Federation. Humanity reached for the stars. When faster-than-light travel became a reality in the 22nd century, several terrestrial corporations competed fiercely to establish the first human colony in a new star system. Tau Ceti was the first system to be colonized, followed by Delta Pavonis, Beta Hydria, and Altair. In their wake, there followed a wild scramble of pioneering expeditions and colonial ventures. The first colony rebelled. The year 2161 saw a dispute between the colony of Tau Ceti III and the Federation Authority, centered on the colonists' repeated refusal to limit the damage they were inflicting on the alien ecosystem. Earth dispatched a fleet with orders to revoke the colony's charter. The colony responded by declaring independence. A military stalemate led to grudging compromise, and the Federal Accord resulted, granting the system rights and representation along with concomitant duties. The Federation, born on Earth, was now an association of star systems. The Birthright Wars gave corporations preferential treatment. Starting in 2621, a group of corporations subjected the federal government to over a century of unrelenting pressure. They demanded the right to buy up underexploited colonial land from its hereditary owners. Under the terms of the original charters, the land belonged to the colonists and their descendants, regardless of their ability to mine, farm, or otherwise exploit it, meaning that immense resources were lying untapped. The corporations argued that with the machinery, workforce, and fleets at their disposal, they could tap those resources. The Federation would be enriched, the original owners would be compensated, and everyone would be satisfied. The Federation bowed to pressure and allowed compulsory purchase of the family's land, albeit for far less than the expected sums. Outrage, rebellion, and, in one case, the defiant resettlement of an entire colony resulted. The Federation's detractors often point to this dark episode as indicative of its true nature, a mere administrative puppet bent to the will of rapacious corporations. The Federation. Society. A federated democracy. The Federation's legislative body is made up of congressmen elected to represent their system or state. Apart from the oldest core systems such as Sol, which encompasses multiple states, each star system within the Federation is considered a single state. New colonies do not qualify for full Federation membership until and unless they fulfill the development objectives set down for them. With self-reliance comes representation. The federal government has its seat on Mars, which was terraformed in 2286. Congress was moved there from Earth in the early 3rd millennium. The executive branch is headed by an elected president with a
guys,
fixed
I'm going to end the
8-year
stream
term.
here. I'm hungry.
Constitutional rights obtained. The sovereign rights
End
of
the
all
stream here. Thanks for
individuals
watching,
are
guys. I'll see you when I
enshrined
see you
in the
next.
Constitution, which is a modified and streamlined version of the US Constitution, originally codified in the 18th century. The right to liberty underscores